Chapter 4300. Everything would be fine once they found the nest. The scouts, Long Eagle and young Sparrowhawk, brought back the news. The second the blood-red setting sun fell from the clouds to the horizon, night fell. The haze of the night began to envelop the entire city of Jenny. Dozens of black shadows quietly swept past the dark corners and headed toward the port of Jenny. The target's coordinates were the port, 6 kilometers away from the port. They would arrive in half an hour. The special forces with fierce eyes quickly began their combat deployment. The equipment brought by the Snowfield Brigade was several levels better than the lightly equipped Storm Commandos. Codename E6 was holding an anti-materiel sniper rifle with a range of 1,500 meters and a 12.7 mm caliber M99. K7 was holding wireless equipment and infrared equipment. Explosives Master V8 was holding AC-4 and smoke grenade. Explosives Master G3 was holding a fire control system. T6 was holding a personal computer. Everyone was equipped with a life support system and weapon subsystem. It could be said that they were currently carrying the most advanced personal combat equipment. They had almost everything they wanted. The ballistic calculator was turned on and the three-dimensional battle-dimensional electronic map of the entire port that Long Eagle and young Sparrowhawk had scouted was inserted into the computer. Xia Jinyuan began his combat deployment for the day. The first to be arranged was the sniper's position. Sniper E6 and Observer Y6 quickly calculated the best all-around sniping position according to the dimensional electronic map and the ballistic calculator. The sniper's position is also our retreat route. After cutting in from this line, Xia Jinyuan scanned the electronic map with a laser pointer in his hand. His expression became colder under the faint light of the computer screen. The attack point's coordinates are 20 meters to the left of the port's entrance. The retreat point's coordinates are position A of the port's unloading area. Sniper E6, cover us and clear out the heavy firepower. Understood. Sniper E6 and Observer Y6 nodded at the same time. Explosives Specialists V8 and G3, cut in from here. Use Aqua Regia to dissolve the metal door. Clean up the mess inside first. Understood. V8 and G3 quickly looked at each other and nodded slightly. Aqua Regia, also known as regal acid and nitrohydrochloric acid, was a very corrosive liquid. It could melt steel directly when poured on it. It was a very common invasion tactic in individual combat. Aqua Regia was easy to decompose and had the smell of chlorine. It could not be prepared in advance and had to be prepared on the spot. Long Eagle, young Sparrowhawk, you two provide the distance of the route. I want the distance to be precise as 0. Do you understand? The distance of the route was directly related to the success or failure of the entire battle. After Xia Jinyuan finished speaking, he stared at the two of them coldly and said, "My life is in your hands." Understood. The two scouts nodded. They had brought laser rangefinders with them. Combined with the wall-penetrating infrared, it was completely possible. Following Captain Xia Jinyuan's arrangement, the Special Forces soldiers who were hiding in the dark all knew their positions and how to cooperate with each other. The computer closed, and the cold light on the screen disappeared instantly. The flash of light on the screen made every Special Forces soldier's eyes flash with a cold, strange, and extremely vicious light. Set off. After the final order was given, all the Special Forces soldiers walked out of the darkness and into another darkness. The Snowfield Brigade and the Storm Commandos had different combat styles. All the Special Forces soldiers in the Snowfield Brigade were elites who were good at assassination, sneak attacks, decapitation, and other individual combat. As the most elite Special Forces soldiers in China who were completely unknown to others, the combat power of one person was ordinary. A squad, 2 squads, or even a platoon of soldiers could not do anything to them. Chapter 4301. This time, they were carrying out Operation Decapitation. They were going to decapitate the leader of an illegal armed group that had secret ties with a Western country. Mission code, Operation Sandstorm. It was unknown if the negotiations between the representatives of the United Nations had been effective, but the fighting in Jenny City had become much weaker. Of course, it was possible that the government forces were almost completely wiped out, leaving only the stubborn soldiers who had yet to be taken care of. The black shadow shuttled through the city like a ghost. It was so fast that it seemed like its heels didn't touch the ground. It was as if it was floating all the way, disappearing without a trace in the blink of an eye. A transport plane finally landed on its fourth attempt after 3 test landings under the guidance of a flash stick. Commissioner Miao, Commissioner Tao, 3 doctoral students, and translator Yang Heng boarded the civil transport plane at 6:27 in the evening to return to China. However, they needed to transfer midway. Yang Heng boarded from the back of the plane. When he was a few steps away from the cabin, he turned around and looked behind him. At this time, the sky was already dark. Standing in the hazy night sky, he could only see silhouettes and blurred faces. Even so, Yang Heng could still see Yi Qian's figure among the male soldiers at a glance. At 1.68 meters, she was tall in a group of girls, but in a group of male soldiers, she was especially petite. Her petite body and petite figure was holding the exact same rifle that the male soldiers were holding. Standing there, her figure was as straight as an arrow that pierced through the clouds. Her aura was not inferior to the male soldiers at all. In fact, she was even more stubborn and cold than the male soldiers. This was the completely unfamiliar Yi Qian. It was like another Yi Qian that was unfamiliar to him. A Yi Qian that was never known by the students or even her friends. Working in a high-risk job and fighting side by side with a group of Special Forces soldiers as a student, this Yi Qian was getting further and further away from the Yi Qian that he was familiar with. She was becoming more and more different. Take care. I'll wait for you to return to China. Yang Heng didn't know if she would see it, but his gaze had been fixed on her the entire time. He nodded slightly and silently said that in his heart. He turned around and walked into the cabin, taking the special materials with him as he embarked on the journey back to China. Soon, the transport plane took off again. The rumbling sound was like an avalanche as it returned to the sky with a strong gust of wind. In a short while, it turned into a black dot. Only the lights on both sides of the plane were flashing like stars. Finally, it disappeared into the night. Calling the command center, calling the command center. Our plane has taken off safely and will land at Dilua Airport in 8 hours. We will land at Dilua Airport in 8 hours. Roger, roger. Radar lock complete. Radar lock complete. In the sky, the captain called the command center. On the ground, Li Jinyan got in touch with the Navy commander and reported their latest news. They had already left the temporary landing point of the transport plane and were heading to the mine to rescue the employees of the 2 countries who were being controlled by the illegal militants. Lieutenant Colonel Zhu finally received the latest news about the mine. Of the 2 squads of soldiers he sent out, 3 of them rushed back and reported everything they knew about the mine. There are more than 70 illegal militants controlling the mine. The radio has been blocked by them, so there is no way to contact the outside world. There are still illegal militants on the way. We temporarily drove the car into the forest to hide. We will come back on foot. Lieutenant Colonel, we have to send troops as soon as possible. The soldier's report made Lieutenant Colonel Zhu's thick eyebrows knit together. There were already more than 70 illegal militants. If they encountered them on the way, then the Special Forces brothers who were going to rescue them would have to fight fiercely again. Chapter 4302. Colonel Zhu listened to the soldier's report with furrowed brows. After a moment of silence, he turned around and stopped in front of a military map. This was the military map of the entire city, including the rainforest where the mine was located. Where exactly is the car parked? He asked the soldier. The soldier pointed out the approximate location where the car was hidden on the military map. Colonel Zhu's eyes flashed with joy. Without waiting for a moment, he entered the tent and asked the soldier to contact the Brotherhood company that went to rescue the hostages. After several communications, Colonel Zhu finally got in touch with the storm commandos that had already entered the rainforest. The mine located in the northwest of the city was located in the rainforest. The rainforest was divided into two parts. 59% of the rainforest belonged to Libya and 41% belonged to the neighboring country. It was rich in minerals. Libya was rich in minerals, forests, and other resources. However, because it was one of the poorest countries, it did not have the ability to develop, mine, and make good use of these resources. The Chinese mining company and the Libyan mining company signed a 5-year contract to develop and share the resources together. When Li Jinyan was talking to Colonel Zhu, the big mermaid pointed at a red sandalwood tree and said to Yi Qian, "Only Libya has such a big red sandalwood tree. Unfortunately, to the Libyan people, this is just a tree. It can't change anything." Red sandalwood was the world's top furniture material. There was a saying in our country, "An inch of red sandalwood is worth an inch of gold." After a short rest, Yi Qian used his hands like a fan to fan himself. The air was a little stuffy. After 4 consecutive days of sunny weather, Yi Qian was soon greeted with a heavy rain. The rainforest was the same. She raised her head and looked at the red sandalwood tree that required 2 grown men to hug. This was the first time she saw a red sandalwood tree. If the Great Mermaid did not point it out to her, she would not have known that she had been so close to the red sandalwood tree. It was said that an inch of red sandalwood was worth an inch of gold. He touched the rough bark of the tree and sighed softly. The resources were rich, but because of poverty, they could not make use of them. This allowed the valuable red sandalwood tree to survive. She did not know if it was a blessing or a tragedy. It seemed like the tragedy was greater than the blessing. The big mermaid thought of something. After that, she fell silent. 3 minutes later, Li Jinyan ended the call and spoke to Sea Anemone in a low voice. After another 2 minutes, the water ghosts received a piece of good news. There was a hidden truck with a full tank of gas, and with any luck, it would be able to drive through. Every vehicle in the peacekeeping camp was equipped with a GPS. At present, it seemed that the vehicles were still in place and had not been driven away by the illegal militants or the Libyan residents of the rainforest. This was good news. Although the car was parked at a place where they had to take a detour, it was better than walking on 2 legs. The group of 16 continued their rapid march. They were 64 kilometers away from the mine. The price to pay for such a close distance was that they had to carve out a path in the rainforest. A path that no one else would take after they had walked it. There was no path at all for the closest distance, and he had to rely on his own 2 feet to create a path. He went straight through the dense forest where there was no path, and the mosquitoes were as large as mutated species in the rainforest. The primeval rainforest here was different from the primeval rainforest at the border of Yun Province. Sometimes, the trees in Yun Province's primeval rainforest would reach the sky. Due to the lack of sunlight, there were only very short shrubs on the ground. The pine needles on the ground were thick. As far as the eye could see, there were straight tree trunks with very few shrubs. But here, there were all kinds of unknown trees that were taller than a person. Between the trees, there were extremely dense shrubs, and within the shrubs, there were also thorny vines that grew and intertwined. With one step, the entire person would disappear. Chapter 4303. He equipped the rifle in his hand with a military knife and used the military knife to cut a path to both sides. Just like that, he forcefully cut a path. It was already 7:32 in the evening. The mine's power plant was restarted, illuminating the entire mine as if it was daytime. Armed illegal militants were guarding the mine. The people inside couldn't get out, and the people outside couldn't get in. The peacekeepers who had been watching the mine hid behind the leaves of a wild banana tree. Their hands tightened as they held their rifles, and their eyes stared ahead without blinking. 2 peacekeepers had taken the risk to enter the mine. Now the power plant was turned on, and the power grid was working again. There was no way out. They didn't know if their brothers had returned safely or if the government would send reinforcements. To be honest, they didn't have much hope that the government would send reinforcements. With Yemen in such chaos, the government couldn't even take care of itself. How could they send any extra troops? It was up to the Libyan mine companies to come up with a countermeasure. It finally started to rain. It wasn't a drizzle, nor was it heavy. Instead, it was a torrential downpour that made the leaves and the ground rustle. Port Sas, which was located in the northwest of Yemen, looked abandoned from the outside. It was so dilapidated that weeds grew everywhere. A few dark trails passed by in the heavy rain, silently entering the port. There were countless large ships with rusty decks that hadn't sailed for a long time. There were also a few large ships in the harbor for maintenance. In the rainy night, it was like a dormant beast waiting to wake up. The leader of the illegal militants, Clo Caesardin, was hiding in Port Sas. No one would have thought that this illegal militant leader, who started wars from time to time, had always been there and had never left. These abandoned ships weren't really abandoned. They were all used by Clo Caesardin. All the reinforcements needed to enter Yemen, including the rebel general Arwa, were sent from here. This was an important port that led to the Atlantic Ocean. Along the coastline, one could enter all the ports in Libya. Clo Caesardin had sent the illegal militants into Yemen through the port. After entering the port, Sniper E6 and Spotter Y6 immediately left the team and found their vantage point. This was their comrades' escape route. They had to guard it well. Sniper in position. Spotter in position. The two hidden under the tarpaulin reported their positions. The anti-material rifle was set up, and the photoelectric sight was calibrated and aimed at a certain spot. There, Ku Luo Kesardin sentries were keeping a close watch. A rainy night was a very convenient time to commit murder. The intertwining rainwater was pouring down, and even the slightest movement would be covered by the rainwater. According to the information provided by the government forces, Clo Caesardin was in the abandoned ship numbered 11662 in the middle. All the black shadows snuck into the abandoned ship as fast as they could without alerting the hidden sentries. With the appearance of anti-jamming, the Z7 immediately went into electromagnetic silence and used multiple access and spread spectrum to hide their wireless communication band. A few green figures appeared on the screen. Z7 stretched out his hand and clenched his fist. It meant that he would deal with all 5 of them in one go. The aqua regia was poured onto the iron sheet. After a puff of smoke, a big hole was melted out of the tightly locked iron door. Then, the door was gently pushed open bit by bit. 3 black shadows rushed forward fiercely and instantly killed the 3 outermost guards. Chapter 4304. There was no sound, no struggle. Just like that, he slit his throat from behind and eliminated the target. Forward, turn left. 2 people, eliminated, Z7 spoke softly. He took down the 3 shadows that had eliminated the targets and continued to move. Not long after, he saw that the 2 targets had been eliminated. The reason why an assassination was called an assassination was that it had to be done quietly and without alerting anyone, including the target. From the beginning of the operation to the end of the evacuation, they had to come and go without a trace. However, although the harbor where Clo Caesardin was hiding seemed peaceful, it was actually filled with danger. As the captain, Xia Jinyuan could not guarantee that the entire process would go smoothly. Therefore, he had arranged for an ambush in advance to preserve his strength until the very end. Over. K7's cold and monotonous voice came through the earpiece. He was the most suitable person for this kind of sudden attack. He was an assaulter after all. The comrades who had entered could no longer see their target. They had all been dragged to a corner to avoid being discovered. The 5 of them were neither sentries nor patrolling soldiers. They looked more like lazy guys who were blocking the entrance for the special forces. As for the real entrance, Xia Jinyuan had no choice at all. If he wanted to enter from the real entrance, he would have to eliminate the sentries. It was not easy to eliminate the sentries, but the difficult part was after the sentries were eliminated. What if he was discovered? Therefore, he never considered entering from the real entrance for every assassination operation. Instead, he would create another entrance to ensure that no one would notice. However, after entering the cabin for real, Xia Jinyuan quickly realized that the information provided by the Libyan government might not be accurate. The intelligence indicated that Klo Caesardin was a cunning leader of illegal militants who had high-tech weapons by his side. Other than the sentries they had infiltrated, there were no other high-tech weapons in the cabin. Other than the radio waves captured by Z7, there was not even a basic infrared device. There was surveillance equipment, but it was useless after Z7 hacked into it. Reinvestigate. Realizing that the information was not accurate, Xia Jinyuan made a prompt decision. He had Z7 hack into the surveillance equipment to see if he could find any clues. Z7's main focus was electronic information warfare. His comrades around him were on high alert. His fingers flew across the screen and quickly hacked into the equipment's database. After checking all the surveillance cameras and filtering through them several times, Z7's eyes lit up after 10 minutes. Klo Caesardin wasn't hiding in the abandoned ship 11662. Instead, he was hiding in another abandoned ship through the entrance of the abandoned ship 11662. Fortunately, the two ships were side by side, so there was no need to change the battle deployment. You're cunning enough. Unfortunately, you've run into us, Z7 said in a low voice with a cold smirk on his face. Let's go, brothers. This time, we're going straight to the enemy's lair. The shadows hiding in the crew room came out one by one, heading towards the entrance to the real thieves' lair. Outside, the wind and rain interweaved, and the sea surged with waves one after another. The waves hit the tall hull of the cargo ship and created waves that could make people dizzy. The waves were big, but the abandoned ship did not move or sway, as if it had taken root. They were all abandoned ships that could carry up to 400,000 tons. Now that they were stranded on the beach, they were like small islands. The waves could not move them at all. They did not enter from the abandoned ship 1162. Instead, they walked out of the abandoned ship 1162 and braved the rain to board the abandoned ship where Klo Caesardin was hiding. 20 minutes later, Xia Jinyuan successfully led his team into the cabin. This time, Z7 did not follow them. Chapter 4305. Just as the intel said, Klo Caesardin was equipped with high-tech weapons. Z7, who had infiltrated the probe's database, first hacked into the other party's wireless communications. Then, he silenced his own wireless communications, only receiving and not sending. Z7 controlled all the surveillance equipment on the ship to provide timely information to his comrades in the complicated cabins below, including the way to enter Klo Caesardin's lounge. The darkness before them was no longer as dim yellow lights illuminated the complicated cabins from time to time. Armed illegal militants could be seen everywhere. The Snowfield Brigade's special forces had a hard time moving forward. With every step, they had to crouch and dodge one whistle after another with the help of the infrared wall-detecting equipment. Then, with the help of the individual thermal imaging equipment, they narrowly avoided the whistles hidden in the dark. Walking in the dark, the Special Forces soldiers who were sweating profusely were all thankful for the individual combat systems they had brought with them. Without these good buddies, they would have been lucky enough to enter the cabin tonight, but they definitely wouldn't have made it out alive. Whistles, infrared sensors, and surveillance equipment were everywhere. F***CK, do they really think they're the rulers? Z7, who had not entered the cabin but was sweating profusely as well, gritted his teeth and said, "When we get out later, we'll find a hidden surveillance equipment and 2 infrared sensors. F***CK. Do they want to be the next Pentagon? Cut the F***CK the crap and get it done, V8 said in a low voice. He was now hooked onto the cabin's pipe. Sweat dripped from the back of his neck like a water leak. Z7, whose fingers were already blurred, bit his cheeks and said, I regret not keeping X by my side. With the 2 of us hacking the system together, we could have saved at least half the time. From cracking the firewall of the hidden surveillance equipment to blocking it, it took 8 minutes. X, who graduated from Tsinghua University's computer science department, did not say anything. He and Y had other things to do. The next step was to destroy the infrared sensor's transmission signal. Z7 was an expert at such things. He captured the frequency of the infrared sensor's signal, regenerated it, and retransmitted it through the transmitter. The hidden infrared sensor was temporarily useless. After another 5 minutes, Z7's voice was heard slowly. Done. A new round of sweat appeared on the Black Shadow's body. He held his breath and finally passed the turn. It seemed that he was about to reach the end of the cabin. 3 anchors. That's right. Turn here and you'll reach Kulo Kesardin's lounge. 3 meters forward. 2 whistles will clear the area. The 2 commandos had already taken care of the 2 hidden sentries, and the infrared light through the wall showed that there were still 2 targets waiting to be taken care of behind the wall. Let's deal with it directly. Xia Jinyuan clenched his fists and sped up. In front of him was Kulo Kesardin's lounge. He had already taken 999 steps, and there was only 1 step left. He and K7 attacked at the same time. They broke the necks of the 2 whistlers that were attracted by the small commotion. Their hooked hands broke the necks of the 2 targets. Before they could come down, their comrades had already rushed forward to catch the 2 targets who had lost their breath. Then, they carried them to the side. X and Y were already squatting in front of the door to Kulo Kesardin's lounge. It was a password-protected door, and not just any fingerprint or numerical password. A total of 4 sets of passwords had to be entered, and the 4 locks had to be cracked before the door could be opened. Chapter 4306. Both X and Y were top students in the computer science department. It was purely a coincidence that they entered the Snowfield Brigade. Perhaps it was because they were too young and frivolous that they entered a website that they should not have. As a result, they were targeted and kicked out of school. Half a year later, they returned to society like savages. After that, the 2 of them held hands and ran wildly on the military road with teary eyes. They could not stop running, and after a few years, they became unyielding Special Forces soldiers. Becoming Special Forces soldiers did not mean that their skills were wasted. On the contrary, they became more proficient with their skills year after year. There was nothing that they could not handle. The 2 of them stepped forward. One of them translated the calculations while the other operated the password shaft. The 2 of them squatted left and right, and time seemed to pass extremely slowly. After a few blinks from Xia Jinyuan's side, the green world received an OK from the 2 of them. It's done. Little guys, you're amazing. 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Z7, who was monitoring through the screen, said with a smile. In a place where his comrades could not see, he secretly wiped his sweat. F***CK. This is too F***king nerve-wracking. It made him sweat profusely outside. As the saying goes, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Therefore, the lounge was not the final hiding place of the target, Kulo Kesardin. It was usually a place where Kulo Kesardin received his so-called generals. The reclusive Kulo Kesardin treasured his life. All kinds of checkpoints and defenses, in Z7's words, were designed to be as strict as the Pentagon. However, no matter how strict the security was, it did not stop the silent invasion of the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces. The moment the password door was pushed open, Y's expression changed abruptly. He saw a data cable peeking out from the edge of the password door. Z7, don't F** King talk nonsense. There's a group of independent probes inside. Wise words made everyone's expression change. Z7, who was outside, said with a smile, "It's okay. Go in boldly. Your brothers will protect you. We'll be with you." F***ck. Speak human. Thank you. Wise face contorted. Only then did he calm down. It meant that he had discovered it in advance, and had already taken care of it. Xia Jinyuan, who was at the back, was so shocked by this that his back was sweating. Hearing this, he let out a sigh of relief and gestured to G3, who was also at the back, to follow them. Then, more than 10 Special Forces soldiers quickly entered the lounge. Z7's low voice came from the earpiece, telling his comrades that there was a whole other world behind the lounge. The person who provided the government with the information had a very bad conscience. The information was not even half true and half false. Other than telling the government where Clo Caesardin was hiding, everything else was F***King fake. At 9 p.m. local time in Libya, Clo Caesardin ended his call with a Western country. 3 days later, another batch of new weapons arrived at the port, and there were only 2 things he needed to do: destroy all the Chinese mines in Libya, make the Libyan government take the initiative to attack, make the Libyan mining companies unilaterally terminate their contracts, and make all the Chinese mines leave Libya. Secondly, all the minerals produced by China's mining factories in Libya in the past month will be provided. Apart from that, it would be even better if there were some documents and information. He only needed to complete these 2 tasks. Once they were done, the 2 batches of weapons that arrived at Port Sask would be immediately replenished. Clo Caesardin happily agreed to cooperate. If he wanted to become the Libyan president, he needed the support of a country. It did not matter which country it was, but the prerequisite was that he had to be provided with weapons. Chapter 4307. Of course, he wouldn't let the country that supplied the weapons suffer a loss. He would work hard to maintain a cooperative relationship and eventually achieve mutual benefit. Clo Caesardin waited for the arrival of the new weapons 3 days later, but he didn't know that he would never be able to guard them. Outside, a massacre was underway. This time, the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade were like the Grim Reaper, taking care of Clo Caesardin's bodyguards in the fastest and most brutal way possible. In the depths of the large cargo ship, sticky blood flowed all over the floor and seeped into the corners and crevices. The fallen illegal militants were all tall and strong, completely incomparable to those outside who had long arms and legs but were thin and weak. These people were all Clo Caesardin's personal guards. Now, one by one, they fell to the ground, their expressions ferocious and filled with disbelief as they died with their eyes wide open. All the alarms were disabled, and the only exit was locked. There was no way to leave, not even if they shouted for help. They didn't even know how these people got to the bottom of the ship. Clear! Clear! Go! Alert! Cover the rear! Entering from the lounge, all the commands turned into hand signals. The assault team was the first to open a bloody path and kill all the way to the bottom. Z7 stared at the screen, gritting his teeth so hard that they made a grinding sound. If he hadn't infiltrated the ship in advance, he would never have guessed that the person who provided the information to the government had a backup plan. He betrayed Clo Caesardin, but he was afraid that the government didn't have the ability to kill Clo Caesardin. Therefore, he didn't dare to tell the truth. Other than the hiding place, everything else was fake. To the right, target 4. Adjusting the position of the camera, Z7 reported the targets he saw to the assault team one by one. Those that he couldn't see were all locked onto by the individual combat system. Xia Jinyuan and G3, who were covering the rear, took care of 2 people using infrared. When they passed a corner, Xia Jinyuan slit the throat of a guy who was in charge of the iron pipes from behind. The moment he took care of the target, a rapid breathing sound came from a dark corner opposite the corner. At that moment, Xia Jinyuan, who realized something, quickly pulled out the pistol at his waist and fired. G3 fired faster than Xia Jinyuan. It was an illegal militant who came out of the toilet. He noticed something strange and quickly opened fire. Bang! The sudden gunshot startled everyone in the cabin. Someone shouted, "Why are there gunshots? What happened?" Now they were at the bottom of the cabin. Through the infrared and warm-up images, they detected that there were about 50 illegal militants guarding this place. Previously, they had secretly taken care of more than half of them. In the end, they did not notice that one of them had come out from the toilet. Just like that, they were discovered, and the assassination turned into an open kill. There were no surveillance cameras installed in the toilet, so even the Z7 did not notice the person in the toilet. Xia Jinyuan's arm was bleeding. He was shot by the guy who came out of the toilet. Fortunately, the guy fired in a moment of desperation and was not accurate. The shot hit Xia Jinyuan's arm, and he only had one shot before he was finished off by G3. G3's pistol was equipped with a silencer, so it did not make much noise. The gunshot was so loud that it echoed throughout the cabin. Just like that, a bloody battle began. Fortunately, the Z7 had disabled all the alarms and probes. The heavy door that required 4 passwords to enter the bottom of the ship was also closed. As long as there were no alarms from the inside, the illegal militants outside would not know that something had happened to the heavily protected bottom of the ship. Chapter 4308. The gunshots alerted the bodyguards who had yet to be dealt with. Chaos had yet to arise, but there was already no way to continue the assassination. The infiltrating special forces knew that something bad had happened as soon as they heard the gunshot. When they saw the alarmed target, they did not panic. Instead, they signaled to each other. Then, K7. He leaped and rolled towards the iron bottom of the cabin and hid in a corner. He glanced up and stared at a wire. He pointed upwards and made a horizontal slicing gesture. Project X and Project Y nodded lightly. K7 destroyed the power line, and Project Y and Project X quickly dove forward a few meters. They didn't stop there. They dived a few meters forward, and the Special Forces soldiers beside them also dived a few meters forward. If the distance they were moving forward was a straight line, then everyone would divide this line into several sections. There would be people guarding each section, waiting for the enemy to come over, and then kill them one by one. No one asked why there was a sudden gunshot, and no one asked if anyone was injured, because they had no time to ask these things. If someone was really injured or killed, they could only accept it. This was an operation with a high mortality rate. The will had already been written. If anyone did not return, the will would be sent out. Tap, 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 countless footsteps could be heard. K7, who was at the front, kept flicking his fingers into his earpiece to tell his comrades to get ready for battle. The outlaw militants who were running over noticed that the lights had gone out. They slowed down, and in the darkness the sound of bullets being loaded could be heard clearly. The gunshots alerted them, but they did not realize that the lower cabin had been invaded. After all, there had never been any outsiders here, and their leader had said that this place was even safer than the damned presidential palace in Libya. What happened up ahead? Sentinel, sentinel! Someone shouted. Then, someone replied, "My pistol accidentally went off." Xia Jinyuan, who was panting and wrapping a bandage around his arm to stop the bleeding, could not help but laugh. If the little fox were here, she would have described it even better. His arm was hit by a pistol bullet, but it did not penetrate through. The bullet was still lodged in his muscles. Even if he lifted his arm slightly, the pain would cause his muscles to tighten. Perhaps because he thought of Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan inexplicably felt that the pain seemed to lessen a lot. This was a bloody battle, and even a bloody battle with a high mortality rate. Even as the leader, he did not know if he could leave this place alive. Klo Kaisardan, a leader of the outlaw militants in Libya, but he was definitely not a nobody. Clo, and with it, with. How? G3 asked in a low voice. There was a strong smell of blood on his body, both his and the enemy's. His painted face was stained with blood, and even his 2 eyebrows were stuck with blood. They were stiff, like 2 stiff eyebrows drawn by the clumsiest makeup artist. Xia Jinyuan finished the last step of the bandage with his teeth. He smiled coldly and said, "You can carry on until you leave here alive. Have you finished clearing them?" "Of course. There aren't many left." G3 curled his lips, and a cold smile appeared in his eyes. The air in the lower cabin was getting worse, and the sticky smell of blood filled every corner. The fight had already begun. The outlaw militants who had entered the ambush circle of the special forces finally realized that their place had been invaded. Chapter 4309. Violent roars filled the entire lower deck. The illegal militants realized that someone had infiltrated the lower deck and killed their comrades, so they started to fight back. Someone tried to open fire, but no one gave him a chance. The dim lights all went out and they lost their sense of direction. They were quietly taken care of in the dark. Don't give them too many chances to open fire. The king of the Snowfield Brigade gave his order. He didn't like to fight head-on, and he didn't like to see his comrades sacrificing themselves for the sake of a battle. He didn't like this kind of brainless battle at all. He preferred to preserve his strength so that he could complete the mission in the shortest amount of time possible. He would hide and watch his surroundings. He would quietly take out one target after another, eliminating the potential threats in the shortest amount of time possible so that he could complete the mission as soon as possible. Now that he had been discovered, there was no need to reveal himself. The enemy was in the open, and he was in the dark. He had the advantage, so he had to make good use of it before quietly taking out the targets that were coming out like headless flies. Ugh, someone in the dark struggled in pain. He wanted to break free and breathe loudly. Crack! The sound of a cervical vertebra breaking was heard, and the person who was still trying to break free fell to the ground with his head in a strange position. His face, back, and buttocks were facing up, but the back of his head and chest were facing down. Obviously, someone had twisted his head in a different direction. The Snowfield Brigade completed the last wave of assassinations. Next, they took out their pistols and started the first wave of direct fire. Bang! 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 The gunshots rang out. The illegal militants who had heard the sound didn't have time to open fire. They were either hit in the head or the chest. They rushed out as fast as they could, but they were quickly taken out by the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade. Z7 became very busy. He split the probes in the lower deck into several small screens. Through the people coming and going on the screens, he quickly reported to his comrades where the targets were moving and where the targets were hiding. This allowed his comrades to react quickly and complete the elimination. One by one, the silhouettes on the small screens turned into their comrade. When they locked onto the small screen in the middle, 3 silhouettes suddenly turned back. Z7 instantly realized what was going on. He said to K7, who hadn't shown himself yet, "Brother, it's your turn. Walk 3 meters forward and turn right." K7 didn't say anything. Instead, he used his actions to show Z7 that he understood. Z7's voice through the earpiece was no longer as friendly as before. Instead, it was cold and menacing. "Follow them. We'll be able to find the target. XY you two cover K7. Xia Jinyuan's cold and bloodthirsty voice reached the ears of all his comrades. With his arm bandaged casually, he joined the battle and began the bloodiest purge. The lower cabin was the lowest level of the cargo ship, and it was also Clo Kesardin's personal area of activity at night. Without his orders, no one was allowed to approach. Now that the power supply had been completely destroyed, the lower cabin had become an isolated world. The illegal militants above did not know the situation below, and the illegal militants below could not call for help from above. They were like turtles in a jar, being dealt with one after another. Gunshots rang out. The special forces took the last chance to assassinate another 8 people. There was no way to assassinate the rest, so they could only shoot at the targets they found. There weren't many, only about 7 to 8 people left, including the 3 who had retreated to report to Ku Luo Caesardin. Chapter 43:10. Ku Luo Caesardin opened the large-caliber eagle rifle beside his desk and walked to the door. At the same time, he put his ear close to the door to listen to the commotion outside. There were gunshots outside, but they were short-lived. After a few shots, everything returned to normal. However, even a few gunshots were enough to make Ku Luo Caesardin's heart sink. How could there be gunshots in his room? Without hesitation, Ku Luo Caesardin immediately locked the round steel hatch. Then, in the dark, he walked to the cabinet, opened it, and quickly changed his clothes. It was a complete set of diving equipment, enough for Ku Luo Caesardin to escape by jumping into the sea. Outside, 3 illegal militants knocked on the hatch anxiously while shouting. Even though Ku Luo Caesardin couldn't hear what his subordinates were saying, the banging sounds made his face darken. Stupid things. Were they trying to let the people who had infiltrated the lower cabin to kill him know where he was? A bunch of d***ned, stupid things. With a gloomy face, Ku Luo Caesardin could only curse in his heart. His hands didn't stop moving. In less than 3 minutes, he put on the diving suit, put on the oxygen mask, carried the oxygen tank, and held the flippers in his hands. He skillfully rushed to the right side of the main cabin. There was a door there, and after opening the door, there was a dense collection of pipes. There were sewer pipes, cable pipes, communication pipes, and so on. This was the bottommost layer of the entire cargo hold. If they walked further, they would reach the drainage port. Through the drainage port, they could directly enter the sea and leave. The aqua regia was poured onto the round hatch. The tightly shut hatch was impenetrable. Under the corrosive effects of the aqua regia, a gap appeared little by little, corroding the latch as well. K7 kicked the hatch open. Through the night vision goggles, there was no one in the cabin. There was only a pile of clothes scattered beside a cabinet in the corner. Project X rushed forward to pick up the clothes. His body temperature is still there. He couldn't have escaped for more than 3 minutes. Here. Y found a small, tightly shut door. It was very short and required him to bend down to enter. With a tense expression, he pulled it again and again, only to find it locked from the outside. The entrance to the drainage pipe. He wanted to escape through the drainage pipe. The clothes that he took off showed that he had changed into a diving suit. Y said as he used the aqua regia again. This time, the aqua regia was more useful than bullets. Bullets could not penetrate the thick steel door in a short time, but the highly corrosive aqua regia could do it. Q King, Ku Luo Caesardin is planning to escape through the drainage. K7 reported the news. Then, the sound of running came from outside. His comrades who had cleared all the targets outside rushed over. It was already the most critical moment. How could they let him escape? E6, the target is preparing to escape through the drain. Head to the drain to kill him. Z7, continue your wireless shielding. Xia Jinyuan, whose face was as cold as a thick layer of ice, adjusted the deployment. Next, all of them would leave through the drainage outlet, so the plan to retreat by the original route was cancelled. Got it. E6, who was at the vantage point, put away his AMR. Even with the AMR weighing more than 10 kilograms, his steps were still light and quick. It did not look like he was running while carrying a AMR weighing more than 10 kilograms. The small door was successfully opened. The 3 Special Forces soldiers in action rushed in first. Then, their comrades followed in succession. The 2 comrades in charge of guarding the rear were the last to leave. Chapter 43:11. The sound of footsteps could be heard from the front. It wasn't loud, but it was very clear. It was the sound of running footsteps. His voice roused everyone's spirit. Split into 3 groups and charge straight ahead. Xia Jinyuan waved his hand, and the 13 members quickly split into 3 groups. As the captain, he rushed to the front. Although there was still a bullet in his arm, he was still very fast. Blood had already dyed the white bandage red, but Xia Jinyuan had no time to care. He only had one goal now, to kill Clo Caesardin. Clo Caesardin heard the footsteps behind him. This cunning illegal militant didn't panic. In the darkness, he even had a cruel smile on his face. 2 grenades were thrown out, and the sound of them rolling could be heard. Xia Jinyuan, who was at the front, had a sudden change in expression. He shouted, "Grenades, get out of the way!" Boom, boom. Just as he finished speaking, the sound of an explosion followed by a fireball shook the entire bottom of the cargo ship. The power of the fireball and the grenade was like the fire from the depths of hell, bringing with it a power that could easily destroy lives. The shrapnel splashed in all directions, some embedded in the pipes, some scattered in every corner, and some were swept up by the airwaves to the Special Forces soldiers who had dodged. The sharp shrapnel scratched the back of his hand, leaving a bloody gash. This was the lightest injury one could get from a grenade explosion. It was only a small wound. The cargo ship was too heavy. The threat of 2 grenades wasn't enough to shake it, but the sound was still powerful. The illegal militants on the bottom deck seemed to have heard the sound of drums from below. It was very deep and muffled. The sound was enough to alarm the patrolling personnel, who immediately reported the news. Then, the illegal militants on top moved. The Special Forces soldier of the Snowfield Brigade dodged to the side. Before the smoke dissipated, Xia Jinyuan, whose ear had been grazed by shrapnel, had already gotten up. He listened to the footsteps in front of him closely. "Let's go," G3 shouted in a low voice. He held his gun and chased after Xia Jinyuan's footstep. Clo Caesardin, who was getting closer and closer to the drainage outlet, heard footsteps again. Not far behind him, someone was chasing him at a speed that made his heart sink. "Son of a bitch!" He cursed, but he didn't stop, nor did he throw another grenade. He didn't have any more grenades. He only had a handgun on him now. He didn't even bring a large-caliber rifle because he was afraid that it would affect his escape speed. Now, he realized that he had made a huge mistake when he escaped. He should not have only thought about escaping, but also thought about bringing a rifle with him so that he could use it to fight back in an emergency. He didn't even have the chance to make up for his mistake. He could only charge forward. He even threw the oxygen tank to the side as it clanged incessantly. Without the oxygen tank, Clo Caesardin ran much faster. Xia Jinyuan, who had caught up, had already seen the running figure. He holstered his pistol and quickly switched to a rifle. Through the laser sight, a red dot fell behind the figure. Bang! The 7.2mm bullet from the Type 95 rifle hit the figure. The fleeing figure staggered and fell to the ground. The drainage outlet that allowed Clo Caesardin to escape was just inches away. He could even hear the sound of the waves and the pouring rain outside. Chapter 43:12. At the same time, the illegal militants realized that all their walkie-talkies had lost their functions. They tried to contact the people below, but the walkie-talkies were silent. There wasn't even the slightest buzzing sound. Something's wrong. Something must have happened down there. They all knew that something had happened down there, but they had no way to go down. The hatch that required a password to enter was blocking their way. They knew that something had happened down there, but there was nothing they could do. Z7 put away all his equipment and quickly approached his comrades. They retreated from the drain and left from the end of the port, avoiding Clo Caesardin's important sentries until they left the port. The waves were very big. Xia Jinyuan's injured arm was immediately irritated by the seawater as he jumped down from the drain. He couldn't help but purse his thin lips. How could the wound not hurt when salt was poured on it? The pain would only last for a while. The codename Operation Sandstorm was successfully completed. No comrades were sacrificed. The endless darkness swallowed up a dozen figures. The intertwining wind and rain covered the sound of clapping. Footprints were left on the beach. The footprints left behind by the waves disappeared without a trace. Kulo Caesardin, one of the leaders of the illegal organization that had been captured by the Libyan government forces for more than 10 years, was now lying less than a meter away from the spit. Blood dripped out of the spit, one drop after another, dripping into the surging sea current. Inside the abandoned cargo ship, the hatch that was installed with a password was shot by bullet. There were countless densely packed holes on it, but the hatch was still tightly shut. There was no way to break it open. The illegal militants outside were already searching everywhere. They chased and ran in the rain. When the power supply was destroyed, they used strong flashlights to illuminate the area. In the end, other than finding countless of their comrades who had been killed, they didn't find anything else. They looked up at the sea and around the port. It was pitch black everywhere. Other than the sound of the wind, rain, and waves, they couldn't even hear the roars of their own people. After an unknown period of time, the damaged backup power supply was finally fixed. The technicians hired by Kulo Caesardin to oversee the abandoned ship were finally able to restart the computer. However, they found that all the data in the bottom cabin had been destroyed. There was no way for them to know what had happened in the bottom cabin through the database. Looking at their firewall, they knew that it had been breached. The other party had erased all traces before leaving, so there was no way for them to capture the data and find out who had hacked the database. At 11 p.m. local time in Libya, the technicians, who had spent more than 2 hours, finally managed to decipher the 4 passwords of the door. The moment the hatch was opened, the smell of blood rushed out. Blood flowed like a river inside, countless illegal militants on the ground, as if they had been killed by a monster under the sea. Not a single one was left. They found Kulo Caesardin in Libya. Kulo Caesardin's brother, the leader of the illegal militants. Kulo Caesardin's brother, who was Caesardin Caesardin's. Kulo Caesardin Libya. Calm, kid. The muscles are strong enough. You're lucky that you didn't injure your nerves. K7, who had picked out the bullet, said calmly. Faced with the bloody wound, he didn't even raise his eyebrows. From the beginning of the debridement to the end of the suture, everything was done in one go. Chapter 43:13. They had already left the port and walked for nearly 2 hours in the rain before they found a shelter to treat their wound. This time, the only one who was shot was Xia Jinyuan. Other than that, the rest of the wounds were just abrasions. They immediately disinfected them and didn't even need to bandage them. Before they finished bandaging their wounds, Z7 walked over and said in a low voice, "The boss is looking for you." Major General Yang's voice came from the headset. It was a private conversation and not all the Special Forces soldiers could hear it. There's an accident in a Chinese mine that produces important materials. 12 Chinese employees and 64 local Libyan employees are under the control of illegal militants. A team of brothers that you're familiar with has already rushed over to rescue them. 76 hostages needed to be rescued. Xia Jinyuan's eyes were cold. He asked, "Are there any casualties?" "We haven't received any information yet. The other party has blocked all communications in the mine. Even if there is." Major General Yang sighed softly and hid his unfinished words. He changed the topic and said, "Because there are more hostages, the peacekeepers who returned to the camp to report said that there are more illegal militants with sophisticated weapons. For safety's sake, you have to go over and support them." Major General Yang was the first to know that Kulo Caesardin was successfully killed. At the same time, he also learned about the situation of the Special Forces soldiers who carried out the mission in detail. The death rate of the desert operation was 0. Major General Yang, who was waiting for news in China, felt a surge of excitement when he heard the news. Good job. Good Chinese man. Major General Yang gave the order again. He considered the situation of all his soldiers. If possible, he would like to let the soldiers he was proud of rest well. However, this was just his imagination. After listening, Xia Jinyuan glanced at the bandaged wounds and replied, "We can do another mission. I don't know which brother company it is. Can you contact them?" Major General Yang replied, "The Storm Commandos. They're all acquaintances who have trained together." The young officer's voice was full of energy. It was a little arrogant and cold, but more than that, it was the confidence of a soldier. It was reassuring. Xia Jinyuan, who had been leaning against the chair, suddenly became excited. He mouthed the words, "New job," to his brothers, who were looking at him. With a solemn expression, he replied, "It's been a long time since we worked with them. Give us the address of the mine, and we'll act immediately." Major General Yang reported the location of the mining factory, and Xia Jinyuan relayed it to Z7. After a few keystrokes, Z7 knew the exact location of the mining factory. He stared at Xia Jinyuan, who was carrying military equipment, and narrowed his eyes. He asked, "Other than the hostage rescue, are there any other instructions? What was so valuable about a mine in the depths of the rainforest that the illegal militants had to go to? Moreover, the news about the mine had been blocked. Blow up the mine, including the equipment that wasn't moved in time." "Got it." Xia Jinyuan thought that the call was over, but to his surprise, Major General Yang suddenly threw a bomb at him, making Xia Jinyuan wonder if he had misheard. "Qing Niao? You said that Qing Niao is with the Demon King now? She's on a mission with the water ghosts?" Not long ago, he was still thinking about Little Fox. Now, he was directly told that the girl he was thinking about was also in Libya, and she was on a mission with the water ghosts of the Storm Commandos, who were about to meet up with them. This news made Xia Jinyuan, who had always been calm, lose his composure. "What are you waiting for? Let's go, let's go. The girl who should be studying in China is actually out on a mission again, and she's even fighting side by side with the water ghosts who have tried to kidnap her time and time again. Brothers from the Navy, what's wrong with you? Why are you looking for Qing Niao from the army?" Chapter 43:14. T6's eyes widened and two words were written in his eyes. The word liar was written in his left eye, and the word human was written in his right eye. How was that possible? Qing Niao. That was Qing Niao. The Qing Niao of the army. The Qing Niao of the Snowfield Brigade. How could she possibly fight alongside a group of Navy soldiers in blue and white camouflage uniforms? How was that possible? They were not even from the same military. How is that possible? Could it be that Qing Niao was really poached by the Navy who likes to poach people? V8, who also clearly did not believe it and felt that it was unbelievable, voiced out his worries. Someone immediately smacked his head. Since he was wearing a helmet, it did not hurt, but he stumbled a step forward from the impact. He heard his captain say, "Is Qing Niao the kind of soldier who can be easily poached?" She really was not. Xia Jinyuan's words calmed the soldiers' morale. G3 said solemnly, "We only have 12 employees, and there are 64 Libyan employees. Did the boss say what arrangements the Libyan government has made?" This was what G3 was concerned about. As for whether Qing Niao had been poached by the Navy, well, the captain said that Qing Niao was not the kind of female soldier who could be easily poached. Everyone was relieved when they heard that. Xia Jinyuan, who was putting on his combat uniform again, said calmly, "The boss did not say anything. It seems that the Libyan government has made no arrangement. Now that the situation is starting to get out of control again, the government forces will not specially send troops to rescue the 64 Libyan employees. The boss knows this very well, which is why he sent us to provide support. Save as many of the Libyan employees as possible. We have to save all of the Chinese employees. This was how war was. As soldiers, they were not God or Mother Mary. They would rescue the Libyan employees, but the premise was that they would only take action if they could ensure the safety of the Chinese employees. It could be said that it was cruel or heartless, but this was reality. There was no such thing as mercy on the battlefield. Sometimes, humanity could not even be considered. It was the law of the jungle. If one really wanted to settle the score, one could only say that the country was weak and incompetent. Major General Yang did not mention the rescue of the Libyan employees. He only told Xia Jinyuan exactly how many Libyan employees there were and provided only a number. As for how to judge, he believed that the king of the Snowfield Brigade would make his own decision. Once the order was issued, all the combat power was handed over to Xia Jinyuan, who was in charge of the battle. Even as a superior, he had no right to interfere at will. Xia Jinyuan's words made the young Special Forces soldiers fall into a short silence. They gripped their guns tighter and tighter, as if they were venting their emotions in secret. 64 hostages. The Libyan government had not taken any rescue measures. As soldiers, they deeply felt the sorrow of a country. A weak and incompetent country. This is a weak and incompetent country. China used to be like this as well. But today, the Chinese side had slowly stood up, straightening their backs that were once bent. If they fell behind, they would be beaten. This had never changed since time immemorial. The rain was still falling. The tireless special forces of the Snowfield Brigade, led by Captain Xia Jinyuan, once again embarked on a journey. This was a declaration of war against evil forces. It told those with bad intentions that China was no longer the country that had to be careful even in a war of words, and was afraid of offending powerful countries. China, with its back straight, would use practical actions to tell the illegal militants and the forces behind them that China had risen. Chapter 43:15. The rain washed over the war-ravaged city. In the dark, women hugged children, and the elderly guarded their broken homes. From time to time, they would wake up from their dreams full of fear, and only after a long time could they close their eyes. In a war-torn country, even sleeping had become a luxury for the civilians. Tonight was destined to be a restless night. The Libyan government was already very busy. As for the 64 mine workers who had been kidnapped by illegal militants, the Libyan government said that they could do nothing about the situation. The mine workers were controlled by illegal militants, and the Chinese side had sent troops to rescue them. The Libyan government had not made a move so far. The Chinese side had been communicating with the Libyan government, hoping that the Libyan government could provide help to the peacekeeping soldiers that the Chinese side sent to rescue them. They could only say that they were peacekeeping soldiers, not that the Chinese side had sent troops. After several rounds of communication, the Libyan government's reply was still powerless. They really wanted to send troops to rescue the Libyan employees, but they really did not have extra troops to rescue the 64 Libyan employees who did not listen to the arrangements. Helplessly, they told the Chinese side clearly, they will do their best to protect the Libyan civilians. They need to protect the Libyan civilians in the city of Jenny, the town of Cowal, the capital of Libya, and the Libyan civilians in the various states. They can only painfully choose to give up on the Libyan civilians who do not obey the arrangement. Yes, they clearly told the Chinese side that they had given up on the 64 employees. It was not just painful words, but it was truly painful. Major General Yang could hear the pain in the heart of the Libyan government's senior military officer. Even his voice was engraved with grief and sorrow. He wanted to protect the Libyan citizens, but sometimes reality forced him to make the most helpless and painful choice. They were powerless. They were truly powerless. After many failed attempts to communicate, Major General Yang hung up the phone. The blue veins on the back of his hand were popping out. He spoke to the Navy commander and told him the Libyan government's decision. He clearly heard the sound of a folder being thrown out of the phone. It's fine if they don't know how to rescue them, but they can't even provide transportation. They have completely pinned their hopes on our soldiers. Old Yang, those are the soldiers that we have carefully trained. King. I haven't slept a wink since I was worried that something might have happened to them. Ever since the water demons of the Storm Commandos went abroad to carry out their mission, the Navy commander hadn't slept a wink. No matter how tired he was, he would only close his eyes for a short while before immediately waking up. The soldiers that were sent out were all elites that had been polished for several years. Furthermore, they were the Navy's first batch of amphibious frogman special forces. All of them were the hopes of powerful countries, hoping that after they came out, they would be able to nurture generations of special forces for the Navy. Even if one of them had an accident, it would be like digging out the heart of the Marine commander. Major General Yang could understand the feelings of the Navy commander very well. He felt the same way. He sighed and said, "Old Dong, calm down. They are indeed powerless on their side. As for us, we will not be the good old gentlemen. We will definitely save all the Chinese employees, and then we will save the Libyan employees. If we can save them, we will. Get in touch with your soldiers and tell them that a company of brothers from our army that had fought with them before is rushing over. If we join forces, I won't be afraid that we won't be able to kill those bastards." Chapter 43:16. Did Liu Bing also send other troops? They even fought together with the Storm Commandos before? The angry Navy commander immediately said, "Okay, I'll contact them right away. Old Yang, we have to let them communicate with each other. They can't act alone." "Well, that's what I was thinking. Next, we'll wait for the news from the front line." It was not easy to let two different military forces with different wireless electronic systems communicate with each other. It took nearly 20 minutes for the Navy commander to contact Li Jinyan. The first thing he said was, "There's a group of army brothers that you're familiar with and have fought together with before heading to the mine." Li Jinyan, who was drenched by the rain, heard this and a familiar face flashed in his mind. His future brother-in-law, Xia Jinyuan. The only army brothers that had fought together with him were his troop. Then, the Navy commander talked about the rescue of the Libyan employees. It was still the same words: if they could save them, they would. If they couldn't, they had to give up. "Devil, you're a Chinese soldier. The country didn't train you to send you to your death. Remember your mission and your responsibilities. I don't want to see a good old man in your team. Do you understand?" The military commander's kind and extremely cold voice entered Li Jinyan's ears. In exchange, Li Jinyan answered calmly, "Understood." His sonorous and powerful voice made the Navy commander feel relieved. The soldiers that he had brought up were all good and had never disappointed him. Just listen, he didn't need to explain everything to understand. Li Jinyan had never thought of rescuing all 64 Libyan employees from the beginning. The more people there were, the more chances of being exposed. He had to give up some. Even if he contacted Xia Jinyuan now, he still didn't think of rescuing all the Libyan employees. However, he would try his best to provide opportunities for the Libyan employees to leave. If the situation allowed, they could kill all the illegal militants that controlled the mine, then everyone would be happy. It had been a long time since the peacekeepers hid the car. The car was still there and hadn't been stolen. It was just waiting for them to go over. The car was still there, and the Brotherhood Company had contacted the rescue team. These two pieces of good news made a faint smile appear in Li Jinyan's cold eyes. He told his comrades the good news that the Brotherhood Company had joined forces. Instantly, the torrential rain couldn't hide the water demon's joy. The Brotherhood Company, they knew which Brotherhood Company it was. It was the mysterious and powerful Brotherhood Company that they still didn't know their unit number. The water demons were purely happy that the Brotherhood Company had joined forces. They were even more confident that they could complete the mission. Lieutenant Colonel Zhu sent news that there were two groups of illegal militants heading to the mine. At the same time, there were at least 20 foreign faces who were wearing military uniforms of various brands. They seemed to be mercenaries. Those who could become mercenaries were mostly veterans who had survived the battlefield. All of them were ruthless and had strong battle tactics. With the addition of mercenaries, it would undoubtedly be even more troublesome. The water demons of the Storm Commandos knew that the bones were getting harder and harder to chew. If they did not chew them well, they might even lose their lives. Everyone knew in their hearts, but no one backed down and continued to march. Now that the Brotherhood Company had arrived, and it was the Brotherhood Company that they admired so much. Ha ha, there was really nothing to be afraid of. No matter how hard the bone was to chew, they would chew it. Chapter 43:17. The water ghouls were happy, and so was Yi Qian. Apart from that, she was also very shocked. After going around in circles, she was back to fighting alongside Captain Xia again. Reuniting on the battlefield in a foreign country. Sure enough, her relationship with Captain Xia was different from the rest. How many couples would be like them? Reuniting on the battlefield in a foreign country. Her face, which was a little pale and even a little wrinkled from the rain, had a bright smile on it. She was looking forward to meeting Captain Xia again. Both parties entered the wireless communication system and knew each other's wireless code. They only needed to reconstruct a set of data and rewrite their communication codes to establish a connection. Finally, they would be able to communicate successfully after completing the bridge. In just 15 minutes, the Brotherhood Company's voices could be heard through their respective earpieces. The Storm Commandos' water ghouls were not the only ones who were happy. Similarly, the Special Forces of the Snowfield Brigade were also very happy. There was a fierce battle ahead of them, but it did not affect the joy between the Special Forces of the two different armed forces. Xia Jinyuan did not speak to Yi Qian immediately. As the captain, he first spoke to Li Jinyan alone. The two of them needed to communicate before they could share information. The two captains had a serious conversation alone. Meanwhile, their comrades had already said a lot in the established public channel. Yi Qian listened first and did not say anything until the T6 combatant of the Snowfield Brigade said, "Qing Niao, are you not saying anything because you know you've let us down? Is that why you don't dare to say anything? Or do you think we don't know you're in the Navy now? You're clearly in the Army. How can you run over to the Navy? Are you abandoning us Army brothers?" The topic of conversation shifted to Yi Qian. As the only female soldier in both teams, there was always more to talk about, and it was always the central point. Yi Qian pursed her lips and laughed when she heard this. Before she could say anything, the water ghouls had already spoken for her. Yes, Qing Niao already has thoughts of abandoning all of you. We will continue to work hard, and make her completely leave the Army and transfer to the Navy to become our comrade. You guys better be mentally prepared. Qing Niao is going to be transferred to the military soon. Qing Niao, don't talk to them. They will bully you. The water ghosts of the Storm Commandos all wanted Yi Qian to join their team. However, poaching people would ruin their reputation, so they kept it to themselves and did not say it out loud. But now, the matter that they had been holding back had been exposed by one of their brothers. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity, allowing them to speak openly about it. The pitiful T6 combatant had been knocked on the head and kicked in the calf. He was being bullied like a little girl. Don't you know how to speak? Don't you know how to speak? If you don't know how to speak, then shut up. The water ghosts had been holding back their words, but now that he had blurted it out, they really wanted to give him a tight slap. Knowing that he had committed an unforgivable crime, the T6 combatant hurriedly tried to make up for it. He chuckled and said, "It's not up to you guys to decide. You'll have to Qing Niao to decide. Calling Qing Niao, please remember that you are an army soldier. Thank you." Yi Qian, who had been called out, said, "Long time no see, brothers. It had indeed been a long time since they last met. The last time they worked together with their comrades in the Snowfield Brigade was a year ago. When Xia Jinyuan ended the call with Li Jinyan and switched back to the public channel, it was extremely lively. From time to time, he could even hear his girl's soft laughter. Chapter 43:18. Hearing Yi Qian's light, wind-like laughter, Xia Jinyuan did not immediately speak. Instead, he listened quietly. In his mind, he had already painted her face bit by bit. She really seemed to be standing in front of him with a smile. He had already caressed her face thousands of times in his heart. They had not been separated for long, and he did not expect to meet again so soon. Moreover, they were reunited on the battlefield. With her by his side, the tiredness from fighting through the night and rushing through the rain seemed to have disappeared. He only hoped that he would be able to see her again soon. His girl could still smile. Her mental fortitude was really good. Just now, he had a short conversation with the Demon King. Both of them had a rough idea of the rescue mission. The Demon King had even told him that he was prepared to sacrifice himself for this mission. Mercenaries, illegal armed forces, and hostages to cover the retreat were all extremely dangerous. Sacrificing himself was not an excessive thought, and his girl could be said to be the most experienced soldier out of the 15 of them. She had to be very clear about the situation at the front line. However, when faced with the possibility of sacrificing herself, she still smiled like a gentle spring breeze, without a trace of gloominess. His girl was already considered a veteran. Xia Jinyuan did not speak. Li Jinyan did not speak either. Their comrades from different branches of the military mistakenly thought that they were still communicating. Yi Qian also thought so. It was only when Li Jinyan spoke that she realized they had been eavesdropping on the public channel for a long time. Q King, after eavesdropping for so long, it's time to hurry up with your soldiers. When his brother-in-law spoke, his brother-in-law, Xia Jinyuan, face-bombed. Sigh, even though his identity had been recognized, his brother-in-law was still that difficult brother-in-law who was cheerfully dragging him down. When Yi Qian heard this, her smile immediately stopped. For some reason, her cheeks that had been washed white by the rain had a faint pink color, as if she was anticipating something. There was also an undetectable sweetness and shyness in her eyes. In the eyes of her comrades, she was a top-notch female soldier. However, in the eyes of the man she loved deeply, she was still that girl who needed his protection. The two of them were standing in the same country and were less than 50 kilometers apart. However, their hearts were already close to each other when they found out that the other was here. Even if they did not take the initiative to greet each other, they knew what the other was thinking. When Xia Jinyuan heard her suddenly stop laughing, he knew that his girl was shy and avoided arousing suspicion again. In the face of so many comrades who fought side by side with him, this boyfriend of his was not just a boyfriend, but a team leader. Xia Jinyuan cleared his throat and said with a faint smile, "After chatting for so long, isn't it time to go? It's up to you to get the Qing Niao back. I can't bear for Qing Niao to leave our team." The last two sentences had a deeper meaning. The T6, G3, and other comrades who knew the relationship between the two of them had already started laughing. Look at their captain. His sweet talk was so smooth and dignified. With his EQ, it was no wonder that he could capture Qing Niao's heart. His EQ was really high. At that moment, the comrades who knew the truth felt an inexplicable sweetness in their hearts. It was as if they had fallen in love and said sweet words to each other. It was so sweet that they felt peace deep in their hearts. It was not that they did not love, nor that they did not want to love, but the love they were waiting for was not the sweetness of men and women in the world. Other than sweetness, their love had a different kind of bloodshed. This was enough to make them hesitate and not dare to take a step forward, for fear that they would let their love down. Chapter 43:19. It wasn't that they didn't love or didn't want to love, but they were afraid of love, even though they weren't afraid of death. They longed to be loved, longed to have love, but were also afraid of being loved, afraid that it would be an empty dream. They became cowards, who were afraid of meeting love, and all the bachelors in the team were like that. However, the love between Q King and Qing Niao made them see a different kind of sweetness, and the cowards dared to love again. Even if the journey was bloody, as long as she was by his side, he would feel happy. Listening to Xia Jinyuan's words of love, V8, Z7, and the other comrades smiled deeply. The comrades who didn't know about the relationship between the two, such as X, Y, and the water demons in the Storm Commandos, all thought that he was worried that Qing Niao would join the Storm Commandos. Immediately, a Special Forces soldier from the Snowfield Brigade patted his chest and said, "Captain, we promise to complete the mission. We promise that Qing Niao won't join the Brotherhood, and will follow Captain wholeheartedly." Follow Captain wholeheartedly? Xia Jinyuan liked hearing that. The water demons didn't like hearing that, and the channel was filled with tsk-tisk sounds to express their dissatisfaction. Whether or not we can make Qing Niao wholeheartedly follow me, the captain, will depend on us brothers. Li Jinyan turned off the microphone and listened to the guy's arrogant voice as he said to Yi Qian, "If I beat him up one day, don't feel bad. He's asking for a beating." Flirting in front of her brother, what else could it be other than asking for a beating? Yi Qian, whose face was so red that his complexion became better, turned off the microphone and replied, "You guys go ahead, I won't be able to see it at school." He was obviously protecting Xia Jinyuan. As the older brother, Li Jinyan's heart was boiling with jealousy. He was so protective, so protective. His heart ached. Even if he had to beat up Xia Jinyuan in the future, he didn't plan to tell his younger sister a single word, lest his younger sister side with Xia Jinyuan again and make him feel sad. After flirting with her, Xia Jinyuan stopped. His girlfriend was shy, and her brother was fierce, protective, and narrow-minded. In order not to be anxious in the future, he had to stop here. "All right, brothers, we've talked and laughed. The time to relax is over. Now, let's focus and talk about how we should meet up as soon as possible. Traveling by foot is a waste of time. We have to find a way to get a car." When it came to the mission, the public channel, which had been filled with laughter a second ago, instantly fell silent. Yi Qian also put away his daughter's thoughts. His expression became exceptionally cold, and his picturesque eyes were filled with killing intent. "I just looked at the distance. After you find a car, you can get close to the periphery of the mine in half an hour. If we don't have a car, even if we run all the way, it will take us about 3 hours to get there. It's too long, walking is not advisable. If they wanted to meet up as soon as possible, they had to get a car. We'll deal with the matter of getting the car ourselves. Demon King, you guys go over and check the surroundings. See if you can send a few people in and report the situation inside. After you sneak in, don't be in a hurry to move. Once you find a breakthrough point, we'll work together from the inside and outside to complete the strangulation." An operation team had its own combat deployment. Now that they had 2 operations teams, they could deploy boldly with sufficient manpower. Li Jinyan said, "2 peacekeepers have already snuck into the mine. The enemy has blocked the entire mine wirelessly, so we can't send any effective information in time. We'll go over and meet up with the 2 squads of peacekeepers first, then sneak into the mine. If the situation changes, we'll take action in advance. You guys will be responsible for providing backup and completing the hostage escort." Chapter 43:20. What he meant was that the Storm Commandos would charge first. If the situation went out of control and the enemy's firepower was too strong, there was no need for them to come back. They would retreat quickly to prevent further sacrifices. Hearing this, Xia Jinyuan said, "Brothers, wait for us. When the situation is stable, we'll take a detour. Hide well and don't show our faces. If we do, we'll be killed in one shot. None of us will be in danger. We have to go back alive. We didn't come here to be sacrificed. The bone is hard to chew. Let's crush it first. Xia Jinyuan was a natural battlefield commander. He had led his troops many times, but he had never chosen to fight head-on. He would never choose to fight head-on with his hot-bloodedness. He would choose to fight head-on and fight his way out with the determination to die. He believed that it was a stupid battle that the commander came up with because of his brain. The reason why he liked to assassinate and kill the enemy quietly was because he could control the situation in advance and understand the enemy's layout. He liked to lead his comrades to attack in the dark, and he could be as ruthless as possible. Therefore, he would not allow the situation that Demon King Li had described to happen. Since they were going to provide reinforcements, his comrades and brothers had to return home alive. Wait for us, brothers. We came here together, so we have to go back together. Not one of us can be left behind. This was Xia Jinyuan's promise. Yi Qian knew that the man she loved deeply was a man of his words. The rain hit the leaves with a swooshing sound. Lightning flashed across the horizon, briefly illuminating the dark clouds in the sky. The truck without lights bumped and bumped. The wheels ran over the muddy road, splashing yellow mud everywhere. It drove forward in the darkness, like the mouth of a giant beast. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the passenger seat, stared straight ahead. She deliberately slowed down her blinking speed. She was as alert as a leopard, not missing a single movement. Half an hour later, the truck stopped moving and drove off the muddy road into the rainforest. They covered up the tire tracks that they had left behind and retreated. On the other side, Xia Jinyuan entered the barracks of the government army stationed in Yeni City. He drove away with a truck and reloaded his grenades through friendly communication. Under the friendly gaze of the lieutenant colonel who provided the vehicle and grenades, Xia Jinyuan drove away with his team members. The Chinese side communicated with the Libyan government again and finally obtained a truck for the Snowfield Brigade, while Xia Jinyuan obtained the best weapon for self-defense: grenades. With a car and a grenade, it was not an exaggeration to say that they had taken a detour in the end. However, they also realized that they had lost contact with the water ghosts of the Storm Commandos. Needless to say, they must have already entered the mine. Li Jinyan and the others found the place where the peacekeepers were hiding and gave the peacekeepers a fright. The peacekeepers, who had lost contact with the outside world, did not know that reinforcements had arrived. They only found out when they got close to them. How could they not be shocked? Our brothers who went in didn't come out. The signal is blocked, so we can't know what's going on inside. So far, 3 groups of illegal militants have entered the mine and set up sentries around it. The peacekeepers who were squatting there told their brothers, who came to support the situation one by one. Meanwhile, De Xia sped up to decipher the other party's wireless communication and then completed the communication system for his own people. 10 minutes later, the 2 teams regained communication. At the same time, the 2 peacekeepers who had sneaked into the mine sent out the latest news. The illegal militants interrogated the employees of the mine and the factory, trying to find out where the special materials were flowing to. So far, there were no casualties among the Chinese hostages, but there were Libyan employees. Chapter 43:21. The Chinese employees chose to cooperate and negotiate, while the Libyan employees, who had been destroyed by the war, chose to escape. They did not believe that the government forces would come to save them, nor did they believe the nonsense that they would be released as long as they cooperated. It was all a lie. There was no way they would let them go. The Libyan employees, who had been destroyed by the war and only believed in themselves, chose to escape. They were shot to death, and the few people who were shot were dragged back to the mine's staff cafeteria by the illegal militants. They told everyone who was squatting down with their heads in their hands that they would end up badly if they tried to escape. The blood that flowed out had already dried. It looked like countless dark brown snakes were lying on the ground, staring at the ground. It looked as if they would counterattack in the next second. It was a chilling sight. The cafeteria was full of Libyan employees. A black shadow slowly peeked out of the cafeteria window. His gaze quickly swept across the cafeteria built with iron sheet. In less than 10 seconds, he bent down again and avoided the gazes that were sweeping toward the window. After a while, the black shadow peeked out again and continued to observe the situation inside. It was not until he confirmed that there were no Chinese employees in the cafeteria that he retreated bit by bit. This was the first peacekeeping soldier to enter the mine. The mine, which had been mined for half a year, was very large. The mined waste was not transported out in time and was piled up in the mine. After entering the mine, the peacekeeping soldier carefully avoided the illegal militants standing in the dark. He used to stand guard in the tall tower, but now he was slowly approaching the 4 areas of the staff cafeteria, dormitory, office area, and living area. After contacting the outside, they had no way to confirm whether the hostages in the cafeteria were Chinese employees, so they took the risk to check again. Now they could confirm that there were indeed no Chinese employees inside. So where did the Chinese employees go? Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan, who had received the latest news, focused on the mine. They suspected that the Chinese employees who were not in the cafeteria were all in the mine. They no longer let the peacekeeping soldier take the risk to check, and the storm commandos were replaced by the scouts. Li Jinyan looked at the time. It was already 10 minutes past 12 in the morning. He pursed his thin lips and said to Xia Jinyuan in a deep voice, "My team will go in first to explore and make arrangements. Let's try to solve it as soon as possible. We are now 32 kilometers away from the mine. It will take about half an hour to arrive. You go in and find the Chinese employees first, and then we will work together to rescue them." Xia Jinyuan sat in the car with a cold look in his eyes, trying to keep in touch with his brothers. Now that he had a better understanding of the strength of the illegal militants who controlled the mine, his heart sank. "How much heavy firepower equipment do you have left?" he asked again, his face turning even darker. "Don't fight them before we arrive. Wait for us to arrive before you act." Heavy firepower equipment. Hearing this, Yi Qian and the water demons silently looked at the rifles in their hands. The only firepower they had was the Type 95 automatic rifle. And then that was it. Demon King Li finished reporting the equipment in a second. One Type 95 automatic rifle. As the car swayed, Xia Jinyuan waited for about 10 seconds and frowned. "What else?" "That's it. F***CK. Xia Jinyuan furrowed his brows and kicked the partition in the car. "What are you doing here? Peacekeeping?" The members of the storm assault team did not have much equipment at all. They were all lightly armed and did not even have a single grenade. Other than a rifle and a dagger, they did not have any other weapons that could deal damage. Damn it! They had come to a war-torn country to rescue people, and they were only given these few weapons. Chapter 43:22. Xia Jinyuan's heart was filled with resentment. His face, which was painted with oil, was filled with so much resentment that it could make a child cry. Was he overestimating the strength of the water ghosts? Or was he deliberately tricking them? He cursed a few times, but the water ghosts were not angry. Instead, they persuaded him. "Guns are weapons. There are enough bullets. After we kill a few bastards with grenades on them, won't we have a lethal weapon?" "Q King, calm down, calm down." Just now, the Demon King studied the map of the mine. If the Chinese employees are all gathered in the mine, they are still a little far from where we are now. If we sneak over, it will probably take you the time to rush over. So, there is nothing to worry about. The water ghosts were not angry. Their situation was different at that time. They had boarded Libya as peacekeepers and traveled through the villages. It was against the rules to carry lethal weapons. Moreover, there were no lethal weapons in the peacekeeping camp. Qing Niao had taken a heavy machine gun and hid it in the camp just in case. Xia Jinyuan did not know what mission the water ghosts of the storm commandos were carrying out. Seeing that the water ghosts were persuading him instead, he gritted his teeth and took a deep breath. He reminded them again and again, "They have heavy weapons and rocket launchers. You must wait for us to come over. You must stay calm." After that, he gritted his teeth and said to the driver, "Drive faster." They did not have any weapons and dared to rescue the hostages with only a rifle. He wanted to run over and beat the demon king up. Were they *king going to die? After thinking for a while, Xia Jinyuan contacted Yi Qian alone. The two of them had shared the same channel for a few hours, but this was the first time they had a private conversation. "Qing Niao, listen. Your equipment can't keep up with theirs. The gap is too big. You have more combat experience abroad than the water ghost. You must remember not to be rash. They don't dare to touch the Chinese employees now. You just have to remember this. Wait for us to come over, then we will attack together. Do you understand?" He held the hand of the girl who grew up. They had to hold hands for a long, long time. Yi Qian pressed down on his earpiece and replied softly, "Yes." Then he felt that his answer was too concise. Afraid that he would be suspicious, he added, "I know. The Devil King also said that we are here to save people, not to die. I won't fight them head-on." "All right, wait for me." Xia Jinyuan heaved a sigh of relief. He was really scared just now. He was afraid that in order to save the hostages, the girl had completely disregarded her personal safety. He clearly knew that the battlefield was ruthless and that life was fragile. He also knew that no one could guarantee that they could come back alive after every battle. He also knew that and was never afraid of sacrificing himself. However, when it came to her, he was still afraid. He was afraid that something would happen to her. He was really, really afraid. Xia Jinyuan, whose eyes were red, stared straight ahead. He wished he could appear beside Yi Qian right now. The fully equipped Snowfield Brigade's special forces were all tensed up. They didn't expect that the water demons would dare to enter the tiger's den with just a rifle. Now they understood why their boss had immediately asked them to provide support. The speed of the car instantly increased from 60 kilometers per hour to 80 kilometers per hour. The whole car shook even more violently. The Special Forces soldiers sitting at the back couldn't sit still. They kept bouncing up and down, but their butts didn't even touch the ground. Even so, they still felt that it was too slow. They asked their comrades who were driving to go faster. After all, they had good driving skills. Chapter 43-23. At the request of his comrades, the driver said in a low voice, "Sit tight, don't go out." He stepped on the accelerator. Xia Jinyuan leaned back due to inertia, and the speed of the car instantly increased to 100 kilometers per hour. His comrades behind him all grabbed onto the side of the car, squeezing each other as they moved forward. It was like riding a roller coaster. The speed was so fast that their faces hurt when the rain hit them. The water ghosts had already made their move. The two squads of peacekeepers outside continued to keep a close eye on them. If there was any movement, they would immediately inform the people inside. This way, they would know what was going on outside, and it would be convenient for the water ghosts who were about to sneak into the mine. If they wanted to sneak into the mine, they would first have to pass through the electric fence. This was not difficult for the water ghost. With the tools in hand, destroying the fence was easy. The mine was huge and protected by an electric fence. The illegal militants only strengthened the security at the entrance and exit of the mine. They did not keep a close eye on the surroundings. The water ghosts of the storm commandos found a breakthrough. They cut a hole in the electric fence and quickly entered the mine. Yi Qian, who was smaller than the male soldiers, was the first to enter. After entering, he immediately found a hiding spot and kept a close eye on the surroundings. When he confirmed that it was safe, He said softly, "Follow me." The water ghosts hiding outside quickly sneaked into the mine through the cut hole in the electric fence. The scouts, Seaweed and Sea Anemone, continued to lead the way. Behind them, Big Eel and Big Squid covered them. Yi Qian walked in the middle, and Demon King Li and the other three brought up the rear. The group of 16 people swapped positions like this, maintaining a high level of vigilance as they headed towards the mine. Yi Qian, who had already memorized the map of the mine and the various buildings, would occasionally act as a guide to get closer to the mine. The forest outside the mine was green, and piles of waste rocks could be seen everywhere inside the mine. They bent down and swept past countless piles of waste rocks, heading towards the entrance of the mine. There was no canteen, dormitory, office, or living area. The only place they did not go was the mine, so the possibility of the 12 Chinese employees being in the mine was very high. It was raining, and there were puddles of water in the mine. When one stepped into a puddle, the water instantly turned gray and turbid. Rainwater flowed down from the pile of waste, and there were small, winding streams everywhere. Normally, there would be employees to divert the water away. But now, the water was accumulating, and in some places, the water had already reached the top of the shoes. Yi Qian, whose military boots were soaked in the rain, stepped lightly on the sharp pieces of trash at the edges. He looked at the hand signals of his comrades in front of him and quickly moved forward. Everything was carried out silently. Every comrade was very steady, without a trace of impatience. This was the second time they had rescued a hostage since they arrived in Libya. Compared to the first time, Yi Qian could tell that the water ghosts were much more proficient. Their searching speed was also much faster. Concealment, spying, and advancing they alternated between entering the depths of the mine. Right, 3:00 direction, 4 men's sentry position. Got it. There's still 1 kilometer left. Take the left side of the minecart track. There's a lot of waste, so it's easy to hide. Someone is hiding. The black shadow had already touched the track of the minecart that extended out of the mine with one hand. He immediately crouched down and waited for the sound of footsteps in the rain to pass. Not long after, there was a clanging sound. It was a minecart transporting or coming out along the track. Yi Qian raised his head slightly and looked in the direction of the track. The peacekeeping soldier who was watching from outside whispered, "There's a situation. 2 jeeps are coming." 6 people got out of the jeeps holding small suitcases made of aluminum in their hand. They're Caucasians. They're too far away. I can't hear what they're saying clearly. The guy guarding outside is checking the toolboxes in their hands. Chapter 43-24. Yi Qian, who was lying in the dark, stared at the mine car that was driving away. His eyes narrowed slightly. 6 people came from outside, and a mine car immediately went out. Were they planning to bring the 6 people into the mine? Toolbox? Toolbox for inspecting special materials? 6 people, get back into the car and drive into the mine. As soon as the peacekeeper finished speaking, a cold voice followed. Follow the 6 people who just came in. We will arrive in 5 minutes. It was Xia Jinyuan's voice. They had already arrived and were approaching the mine on foot. The arrival of the Snowfield Brigade's special forces immediately eased the tense rescue atmosphere. They sneaked into the mine quickly. The 2 jeeps that entered the mine were still shaking as they drove. Several black shadows had already cut through the electric fence and sneaked into the mine. The black shadows were as nimble as a mountain cat. They were here 1 second and disappeared in the next. Their speed was so fast that the water ghosts were amazed. As expected of an elite ace, their skills were evident when they made a move. The jeep stopped and 6 Caucasians alighted with umbrellas. At the same time, 4 well-built bodyguards with live ammunition alighted and protected the 6 people. One of the armed men reached out and shook hands with one of the Caucasians briefly. After exchanging a few words, everyone jumped onto the rail car and drove into the depths of the mine. Before the armed man jumped onto the car, he lowered his head and ordered one of his subordinate. Then, the water ghosts who were secretly observing felt that the security was tighter. A group of 12 people trotted toward the mine. The 6 people who came over, I'm afraid that Qing Niao was right about them, Big Eel said in a low voice, suppressing his murderous aura. I'm afraid that they are really here to inspect the materials in the mine so that they can know what kind of special materials China will refine. The 6 people didn't come as individuals, Devil King. They came as representatives of a country. A country? I'm not sure about a few countries. There are more than 1 or 2 Western countries that don't want China to rise. Xia Jinyuan, whose elbow was hurt by the sharp scraps, smiled coldly. The murderous aura in his eyes was thick and dark. Brothers, we have to make sure they don't come back. Devil King, you are responsible for bringing the hostages out. I will handle the matters in the mine. The higher-ups ordered us to destroy all the equipment that was not transferred in time. We have C4 grenades and grenades. It won't be a problem to blow up the entire mine. Li Jinyan did not know how well equipped the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces were. He was looking in the direction Yi Qian was pointing. When he heard what Yi Qian said, he looked at the large red words that read, "Dangerous items, no fireworks allowed." The corners of his mouth turned up slightly. You have a C4, but we have grenades too. You'll need the power of several C4s to blow up a mine. It'll be even more powerful if you use a detonator that's used for mining. Yi Qian was already on the move. Together with her was the scout, Seaweed. Their destination was the gunpowder depot with the warning sign. How did he know that it was a gunpowder store? The words, Gunpowder Vault, were written below the 8 big red ones. As Yi Qian headed to the gunpowder depot, Xia Jinyuan began to deploy the escape route. He had his eyes on 2 trucks, and arranged for 2 of his team members to sneak up to the trucks so that they could drive out when they retreated. E6 was tasked with keeping an eye on the exit of the mine to deal with the 6 Caucasians. If the 6 Caucasians were to be taken care of in the mine, they would shoot as soon as they saw them. The 2 peacekeepers did not let them continue to hide in one place. They ordered them to sneak into the power supply room and wait for orders to destroy the power supply equipment. Chapter 43-25. After entering the mine, Xia Jinyuan completed the entire combat deployment as fast as he could without wasting a second. After receiving the mission to rescue the hostages, Xia Jinyuan made countless combat arrangements according to the electronic drawings provided by the mine. Later, when he learned that the water ghosts were only armed with 1 rifle, he immediately overturned the first 3 sets of combat plans. In the end, the new combat plan also included the deployment of how they should fight in case something happened to the water ghosts of the Storm Commandos. Now that the water ghosts had been stabilized, they also knew how many sentry posts there were along the way to the mine and what kind of weapons each sentry post had. Now, the 2 teams had a total of 31 people. In addition to the 2 peacekeepers who destroyed the equipment and the 8 peacekeepers outside to provide support, there were a total of 41 people. They had more than enough manpower. The 2 teams had members who were responsible for long-range heavy firepower suppression, snipers, assaulters, explosives, and communications personnel who were responsible for communication. They had everything they needed. After completing the combat deployment, Xia Jinyuan began to rub his hands together. After he finished the deployment, he immediately brought the assaulters to meet up with Li Jinyan. Yi Qian had already climbed into the gunpowder warehouse. The originally locked door was hooked with an iron lock that had been pried open, and the seaweed outside was responsible for guarding. In the night vision goggles, Yi Qian picked up a detonator that had already been prepared and was just waiting to be used. His clear voice sounded in the ears of every comrade. There are enough detonators. They are all civilian TNT detonators. There are wires and detonating equipment. It won't be a problem to blow up the entire mine. With so many detonators, it wouldn't be a problem to blow up the entire mountain. Such dangerous items were actually not moved together with the equipment when the Chinese employees were moving the equipment, which made things convenient for them. It was not that the Chinese company did not move them, but the detonators were not important at all compared to human lives, so they simply did not move them. In addition, they were also afraid that something would happen in the mine. With the mentality that it would not be convenient for outsiders even if it blew up, they moved all the detonators that were previously prepared to be used on another mountain into the warehouse. If something really happened, they would blow them all up. Xia Jinyuan laughed softly and said, "Let's see how many kilograms you can carry out. Don't be too greedy. Just move enough to blow up the mine." The people who were sent to mine were definitely military enterprises. With such a large amount of explosives, they were probably planning to blow up the mine. Military enterprises were often much more sensitive to crises than private enterprises, and they would not be soft-hearted when it was time to give up. Yi Qian also wanted to recite more, but Xia Jinyuan reminded her that she only needed to recite enough, so she only recited enough. However, to be on the safe side, she destroyed all the other 4 detonators. She took out 2 of them, one for her own use and the other for backup. Just as the 2 teams finished their tight deployment and were waiting to sneak into the mine, something happened in the cafeteria. Gunshots suddenly rang out. Even though the canteen was several hundred meters away from the 2 teams, the continuous gunshots could still be heard clearly. "Get down, Qing Niao!" Xia Jinyuan, who had specially come to the explosives warehouse to provide support, saw several illegal armed men rushing out. He immediately whispered to Yi Qian to stay on the ground. The gunshots alerted the illegal armed men in control of the mine, and they mobilized people to the cafeteria. There were 10 armed men guarding the cafeteria. They were squatting on the ground with their hands on their heads. Knowing that the government forces would not come to rescue them, the Libyan employees once again rebelled. This time, it was not just a few of them, but everyone. The 10 armed men opened fire at the same time, shooting down a group of Libyan employees. Then, they were pushed down by the Libyan employees, who were still alive and stained with the blood of their compatriots. Chapter 43-26. The Libyan employees, who no longer pinned their hopes on the government forces, used their own methods to save themselves. In fact, it was also a kind of tragedy. They were so sad that they didn't even believe in their own country. Without weapons, they finally found a shelter. In the end, they lost the opportunity to escape because of their own fear, so they had to face it on their own. The Libyan employee who led the charge against the illegal militants was a core member of a nearby village. The main reason why he was recruited was to appease the Libyan indigenous people living nearby. Now, he led more than 60 Libyan employees and used his own flesh and blood to win freedom for himself. Even if he fell, he could exchange for the freedom of the Libyan employees behind him. They couldn't get out alive. These demon-like guys were even more annoying than the NRPL militants. At least the NRPL militants wouldn't aim their guns at the Libyan people. The cafeteria was in chaos. The surviving Libyan employees rushed out of the cafeteria. The illegal militants who received the news quickly rushed over to provide support and fired at the Libyan employees who rushed out. The storm commandos knew what was happening in front of them from the roars of the figures who were running in the direction of the cafeteria. At that moment, 2 of them almost rushed out because of anger in their hearts, but the other 2 black figures pulled them back in time. "Don't be rash, brother." A low, cold, metallic voice was heard. Li Jinyan immediately recognized that it was Xia Jinyuan's soldiers who were warning the members of the Storm Commandos not to be rash. "Remember our mission." Li Jinyan's jaw tightened and his cold voice came through. "Enter the mine in the chaos, quick!" His eyes were so bloodshot that they looked like bloody pupils. In the darkness, the murderous aura that burst out from his bloody pupils was like a steel net with blades, as if he wanted to strangle all those bastards who aimed their guns at the civilians. In the public channel, countless people were breathing rapidly and chaotically. They were all water ghosts who went abroad for the first time for a mission. They were angry because the illegal militants pointed their guns at the Libyan employees. They really wanted to do something. Devil King, take your people into the mine in the chaos. You have to hurry. Compared to the anger of the water ghosts, the young Q King was surprisingly calm. The gunshots did not affect his mood. All his emotions and all his judgments revolved around rescuing people this time and how to maximize his benefits in the chaos. Who was he? He was a soldier who was ordered to carry out a mission. A soldier's duty was to obey orders. Therefore, he could not carry his personal emotions, let alone the emotions of a saint. The Libyan employees chose to resist. This was their choice, and they believed that it was the best choice. What about him? He was a soldier who had been ordered to carry out a mission and rescue all 12 Chinese hostages safely. He had to tell those who dared to directly make decisions against the Chinese side and do something that would endanger the Chinese side to declare war. Don't King stand on the Chinese side's head and behave atrociously. The sudden revolt of the Libyan employees brought certain advantages and disadvantages to the rescue operation. The advantage was that they could take advantage of the chaos to enter the mine. The disadvantage was that they could not confirm whether the Chinese employees were in the mine. Xia Jinyuan held Yi Qian's hand tightly and transmitted his voice to every Special Forces soldier on the mission through the public channel. Although they were happy to be reunited in a foreign country, they could only suppress the joy in their hearts and complete their reunion with just one look. Chapter 43:27. There was no time to say a few heartwarming words. To them, time was of the essence. After speaking, Xia Jinyuan loosened his grip on Yi Qian's hand. They had only held hands for a few seconds. Our country's employees are waiting for us to save them. Your mission is to rescue them. Do you understand? Li Jinyan knew what his team members were going through at this moment. He had experienced it before. This was the psychological process of growing up. After going to the battlefield and experiencing life and death, they completely understood how heavy military orders were. It was also a threshold that they had to cross. The moment they stepped out of the country, they would no longer revolve around training or carrying out missions in their own country. In the future, they would have more opportunities to go out of the country to carry out high-risk, confidential, and desperate missions. Brothers, this was the growth of a professional soldier. The water ghosts, whose internal organs were twisted in pain, began to move. It was too painful, so painful that they felt as if their roots were about to be pulled out of their chests. Their hearts, which had been beating faster due to indignation, were burning. However, they gradually burned into ashes because of Xia Jinyuan's words. The moment the Chinese peacekeeping soldiers who were keeping an eye on the periphery heard the gunshots, they thought that the Chinese soldiers who had entered the mine to rescue the hostages had been exposed. When they received the news from inside, they realized that it was the Libyan employees who had been imprisoned in the canteen who had risen up and resisted. At that moment, the peacekeeping soldiers who were keeping an eye on the periphery all held back their anger. They gritted their teeth so hard that they almost broke a few. The Libyan people who had the courage to resist in a lonely situation were the hope of this country. They would fight for freedom and work hard to survive. Even if this country was riddled with holes, there was a group of people who rose up for freedom and hope. The future would always be there, and they would never abandon the Libyan people. The gunshots became more intense, and the special forces of the two special forces heard it. Their eyes were filled with murderous intent. The water ghosts of the storm commandos approached the mine. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan issued orders almost at the same time. Destroy the power equipment. A calm voice mixed with murderous intent came. The two peacekeepers received the order to pull down the main power valve and then destroy the entire power supply equipment. The entire mining area was plunged into darkness in an instant. The mining area that had lost its photo became a little chaotic. The sentries guarding the mine were also momentarily distracted. The water ghosts of the storm commandos took advantage of their distraction and the fact that these people did not have night vision equipment to blow into the mine like the wind. The storm commandos were already on the move. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade had all found their positions according to their previous battle arrangements. Countless black shadows were moving about, waiting for a fierce battle to descend. Yi Qian, who was fast at shooting, did not enter the mine. Xia Jinyuan took out 6 grenades and handed them to her. It will be a fierce battle. Take a few grenades to defend yourself. Give me the detonator. Later, I'll lay down the mines, you stay on guard. Don't stray too far from me, do you understand? Yi Qian, who had been following orders the entire time, took the grenades and handed over the detonator. Yi Qian then said softly, "Don't keep reminding me. You have to be careful too." His helmet suddenly lifted a little, and a light kiss landed on his lips. It was very, very light. It was just a light touch, and he had already raised his head. "Nothing will happen. I promised you. Let's go, Qin Niao. Captain will take you to battle." The female soldier who had grown up followed the mature and steady male soldier closely. She did not follow him blindly. Instead, she held her gun and was on guard for him and for herself. She had grown up, and Xia Jinyuan, who had been holding her hand as she grew up, could rest assured that his back was in her hands. Chapter 43-28. The 60 or so Libyan employees who resisted caused a lot of trouble for the illegal militant. The 10 rifles that were taken from the cafeteria were all AK rifles. The bullets would penetrate the target directly. Even if they didn't die, they would be crippled. The chaos created was huge. Most importantly, the Libyan employees were very familiar with the mine. The sudden destruction of the electrical equipment made it easier for them to escape. Some of them tried to escape to the exit, but they didn't manage to escape. Instead, they were shot dead by the illegal militant. On the other hand, the Libyan employees who escaped into the mine found a place to hide. Some of them hid and didn't come out easily. Those who had guns in their hands kept firing back. In the chaos, Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan entered the mine at the same time. The two of them kept running forward until they reached a fork in the road. One fork led to the left, while the other led to the right. According to the drawings provided by the Chinese mining company, the left was an abandoned mine that was more than 140 meters deep. The right was a mine that had been mined in the past 2 months. It was similar to the coal mines in China. In the mine, other than a mine cart track that transported the ore out, there were various metal pipes of different sizes on one side of the mine. Some of them were even made of copper. The other side was a passageway that was usually accessible. Both sides of the passageway were covered with a metal mesh that was used to prevent stones from falling and injuring people. After entering the mine on the right, Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan also found an engineering vehicle that transported materials. The engineering vehicle was a special vehicle that was specially designed to transport materials deeper into the mine. The entire vehicle was long, but it was very short. It looked like a flattened truck. There was also a huge black pipe above its head. It was mainly used to discharge air and provide oxygen to the deeper parts of the mine. The vigilant Yi Qian glanced up and saw the corpse of an illegal militant that had already been taken care of lying on top of the pipe. This was the guy that the storm commandos had secretly taken care of first. The channel was very quiet. There was still no news from the water ghosts that had gone deep into the mine to search for the Chinese employees. The situation outside was still unknown for the time being. The Snowfield Brigade's special forces that were preparing for battle outside were silent. This meant that everything was normal and there was no need to worry. The resistance of the Libyan employees had attracted all the attention of the illegal militants. Until now, no Chinese soldiers had snuck into the mine and entered the depths of the mine. Xia Jinyuan began to lay down the mines. He placed the detonators directly on the top of the black oxygen supply pipe, starting from 10 meters deep into the right side of the mine. Finally, the metal wire used to detonate the detonators extended all the way out. Li Jinyan's cold voice came through the earpiece, breaking the silence in the public channel. All the hostages have been found. Prepare for support outside. The battle will begin in 5 minutes. That's right. Got it. Okay. The latest news made the Special Forces soldiers involved in the rescue look even more ferocious. The Chinese peacekeeping soldiers outside immediately sent the news back to the Chinese peacekeeping camp in Jenny City. At this time, the Chinese garrison in Jenny Rivi was being attacked by illegal militants. They arrogantly used loudspeakers to shout at the Chinese peacekeepers, demanding that the Chinese peacekeepers get out of Jenny City immediately. They used a humiliating scram, and even omitted the word evacuate. Lieutenant Colonel Zhu, who had received the latest news from the mining area, contacted China amidst the gunshot. All 12 Chinese employees had been found and were preparing to evacuate. Just as Lieutenant Colonel Zhu contacted China, the bloody battle in the mining area had begun. All 12 employees were held at gunpoint in the mine. The person in charge of the Chinese team was shot in the thigh because he did not cooperate with the illegal militants. His entire knee was blown up, and he had been shot for more than 2 hours. Chapter 43:29. In order to prevent the Chinese leader, who was still useful to them, from dying, the illegal militants immediately stopped the bleeding after shooting his knee until 6 Westerners came over. The Chinese leader, who had lost too much blood, was cruelly dragged to one of the Westerners. Just as the Westerner wanted to ask something, the entire mine suddenly lost power, including the depths of the mine. The mine that lost its light instantly plunged into darkness. 2 of the illegal militants who were standing guard ran out to check the situation, but they were killed by the water demons, who came over without a single drop of blood. The water demons of the Storm Commandos snuck in just in time to hear the threats of the illegal militants because the Chinese leader did not cooperate. There was a backup power supply in the mine. The special forces who moved close to the side of the tunnel first found the electric well box according to the blueprint. By the time Demon King Li and the members of the Storm Commandos could see the Chinese employees and quickly hid in combat positions, the electric well box that was responsible for the mine's backup power supply was destroyed. What the hell are you doing? The last ray of light disappeared, and the guy who threatened the Chinese leader shouted towards the outside of the mine. At the same time, there was the sound of countless bullets being loaded in the darkness. The 6 Westerners who had entered the mine and had yet to start working were stunned at first. Then, the 6 of them pulled out their pistols almost at the same time and aimed at the darkness. The mine was too deep and dark. Even if someone was standing at a distance where they could hear the sound of breathing, there was no way to see the other party's face clearly. The Special Forces soldier outside heard a rhythmic tapping sound coming from his earpiece. It started with the word 1 and continued until the word 3 was played. After hearing the 3 knocks, Xia Jinyuan shouted in a low voice, "Move!" Li Jinyan raised his hand and dozens of black shadows rushed out. The first to be taken care of was the guy who pointed his gun at the Chinese employees. The Chinese employees were squatting, while the illegal militants were standing. This time, it was not an assassination but a shooting. The Type 95 rifle fired continuously, and a magazine of bullets flew out. There were flames at the muzzle of the gun. Get down, all of you get down!" Li Jinyan shouted in Chinese. The squatting Chinese employees were frightened by the gunshots and screamed, thinking that the bullets were shot at them. Then, they suddenly heard someone shout in Chinese, "Get down, all of you get down!" Their desire to survive made them react as quickly as possible. They threw themselves forward and lay on the ground, motionless. Bang bang bang. Bang bang bang. The sound of gunfire was particularly exciting. All the water ghosts fired their bullets at the targets they had their eyes on. They had also divided the targets under their muzzles in advance. Even the 6 Caucasians were not missed. The bullets hit the target and the target fell to the ground. Some of the bullets hit the machinery used to mine the ore. The sound of metal hitting metal rang out continuously, and sparks flew everywhere. This time, the water ghosts were the first to attack. After the first round of shooting, almost all of the armed illegal militants around them were killed, including the guy who was holding a gun and threatening the Chinese representative a few seconds ago. He was the first to be shot in the head by Li Jinyan. The guy whose head was shot into a watermelon was the first to fall to the ground without even calling for help. Although the power outage allowed the armed illegal militants to load their guns in advance, the water ghosts were keeping a close eye on them and did not give them a chance to shoot. They continued to fire until they had no chance to open fire. "Let's go. Hold hands and follow us." They began to retreat. Chapter 43:30. Gunshots rang throughout the entire mine. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian, who were hiding in the 2 forks of the mine, had their fingers on the trigger. Their cold, sharp gazes were fixed in front of them. Numerous figures who had rushed over after hearing the gunshots were instantly killed by the 2 of them. These were the illegal militants who were on sentry duty outside. The illegal militants in the mine were held back by the special forces of the Snowfield Brigade, especially the path into the mine. It was tightly guarded by the special forces, and anyone who wanted to come over and help the mine was killed on the spot. After 2 rounds, the illegal militants who wanted to come over were intimidated. Some of them wanted to inform the outside and let them know that they had been ambushed. In the end, they sadly realized that their communication devices had been blocked, and there was no way for them to contact the outside. The entire mine became even more chaotic. The peacekeepers guarding outside did not move because it was not yet time for them to act. They were the final cover for the retreat. Now that the brothers who had gone in to rescue the people had not come out, they had to continue lying down and waiting. Since it was the rainy season, there was plenty of rain in Labani. The rain had not stopped since the previous evening. The rain splashed down and hit the leaves. The intertwining sound of the rain drowned out the gunshots in the direction of the mine. The blood was also instantly washed away by the rain. The sound of an explosion rang out. The flames from the explosion surged forward and lit up a certain part of the mine. The wind and rain carried the smell of gunpowder. A group attack? Sons of B** cheese, it's convenient to annihilate them all in one go. A cold and ruthless voice rang out from the public channel. Yi Qian, who was helping the Storm Commandos retreat, heard a deafening explosion a few seconds later. Follow closely, follow closely. Bend down, don't raise your head. Keep moving forward. Water Ghost Big Eel's voice could be heard through the earpiece. He, Sea Anemone, Seaweed, and Big Squid, a total of 4 teams led the team to cover the retreat of the Chinese employees. Big Squid carried the Chinese person in charge, whose right knee had been blown off. The last team to cover the retreat was Li Jinyan and the others. Quick, quick, quick! Don't look back, just charge forward. The anxious voices of the water ghosts could be heard through the earpiece, letting all the team members who were helping them know that the situation in the mine was under control. The Snowfield Brigade Special Forces outside had plenty of ammunition. They threw out a few grenades and directly blew up a group of at least 20 illegal militants. The lethality of 1 grenade was not enough, so he threw 3 grenades at once. The explosions shook the ground, and all 20 targets were knocked down in one go. For those who didn't, those who reacted slightly faster were hit by shrapnel. Before they could get up, they were immediately reloaded. Assassinations and night raids were the strengths of the Snowfield Brigade's special forces. Facing these people who were ruthless even to the common people, it would be a waste to kill one more. The terrain of the mining area was complicated, and there were many piles of waste rocks piled up into mountains. It was hard to guarantee that a few powerful illegal militants would try to sneak up on the piles of waste rocks and attack them. However, although they had rushed to the mine with rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, and other heavy weapons, they had left behind a very important item: night vision goggles. The illegal militants who controlled the entire mining area probably didn't expect that they would be ambushed in the middle of the night. Moreover, the attackers had sneaked into the mining area under their control and started a fire attack from the inside. Therefore, even if they had heavy weapons in hand, they couldn't shoot accurately at the Chinese soldiers who had entered the camp. But the fully equipped Chinese special forces could do it. Chapter 43-31. Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian guarded the fork to the death, making it impossible for the illegal militants to enter from the outside. Those who still wanted to rush in the direction of the mine were cut off by the team members, buying time for the water ghosts inside to retreat. They had to retreat quickly. 12 minutes later, Xia Jinyuan and Yi Qian met up with the water ghosts and directly suppressed them from rushing out of the mine. "Drive the car over." Xia Jinyuan ordered his comrade, who had been waiting to drive the car, to move immediately. They rushed toward the mine at top speed. The car's motor roared, and the snow-white high-beam lights shone like two sharp swords cutting the darkness in half. The illegal militants who had entered the fierce battle noticed the situation and opened fire in the direction of the truck. The truck was like an agile snake turning in the mine. It was not driving in a straight line, nor was it driving directly on a road. Instead, it shuttled through piles of waste rocks, making it impossible for the illegal militants to aim and shoot. They could only shoot blindly. F***CK, block the truck, block the truck. D***MN, don't let them get away. Machine gunner, kill them all. D***MN, they're not the D***MN government troops. The truck was a big target. An illegal militant hiding in the dark set up a rocket launcher. After loading it, the guy with a gloomy gaze aimed at one of the waste rocks. Just as the truck was about to drive to the pile of waste rocks he had aimed at, the rocket launcher fired. Rocket launcher V8, fall back, fall back. The fired shell shot straight toward the pile of waste rocks with a long fiery tail. The Special Forces soldiers M and T6, who had locked onto the west side, immediately realized something was wrong. Their voices sounded like they were torn from their throats, full of ruthlessness. The V8 vehicle had already driven into the pile of waste rock. Hearing his comrade's warning, he did not retreat. With bloodshot eyes, he swerved to the right, and the car shot out like a cannonball, rushing toward another pile of waste rocks. Boom! The anti-tank rocket launcher shell hit the pile of waste rocks. Flames and smoke rose into the air. The huge explosion flattened the entire pile of waste rocks, leaving a medium-sized crater in the middle. Countless broken stones and broken pieces splashed in all directions and hit the ground like a rain of stones. Everyone knew the power of a rocket launcher. Amidst the sound of the explosion, T6 shouted for V8. The two of them had always been partners whose lives were linked together. At the moment of the explosion, T6 felt like his life was about to end. V8! V8! The T6 combatant roared. His handsome face, washed by the rain, was so distorted that he looked like a different person. Everyone was waiting for V8's reply. However, V8's reply did not come immediately. The guy hiding on top of the pile of rubble saw that the pile of rubble had been flattened by the explosion. He slowly lowered his head and prepared to leave. M didn't stay where he was. He locked onto the location of the rocket launcher and rushed out with his rifle. He had to find that guy as soon as possible. He had to kill that guy as soon as possible. If there was a first shell, there would be a second one. Once the shell was aimed at the mine, all of their rescue arrangements would fail completely. When his military boots stepped on the puddles, the muddy water splashed everywhere. When he ran over the uneven gravel, there was a thud under his feet. Finally, through his night vision goggles, M saw two figures in that green world. Both of them were carrying something. One was carrying a cannon barrel, and the other was carrying a shell. The range was too far and there was no way to accurately lock onto them. M sped up and rushed out again. However, someone was faster. It was Sniper E6. Chapter 43-32. Bang! The heavy sniper rifle's large-caliber bullet pierced through the air and accurately hit the guy carrying the shell without any deviation. The standing shadow instantly fell down. Even at the moment of his death, he didn't know how he died. When the guy carrying the rocket saw this, he reacted quickly and immediately lay down, rolling in the opposite direction of the sniper bullet. He knew that he had been hit by a sniper, and his companion had been hit by the sniper's bullet. He himself had been targeted by the sniper, and it would be difficult to escape. The rocket launcher had a keen anti-reconnaissance ability, and his speed was also very fast. Knowing that he had been targeted by the sniper, he rolled a few times and stopped moving. Even though his face was bleeding from the sharp rocks, he did not move and allowed the rocks to pierce deeply into his face. This was a guy who had made countless contributions to the anti-government forces. He was also a guy who was ruthless enough to shoot civilians as he pleased. Just because a child bumped into him, he used the dagger in his hand to cut off the child's head and tossed it around for fun. His hands were stained with blood, and his heart was trembling slightly. He was not sure if he could escape from the sniper's muzzle. He looked viciously at his companion who had been killed by the sniper. He did not care about his companion's death. What he cared about was whether he could get the shell to his side. M did not give him a chance. Although the E6 had locked onto the entire sniping range, the other party had slyly rolled to the other side, blocking his line of sight. He wanted to change sniping positions, but M told him to leave the guy who was still alive to him. "I'll make sure he stays on top of the rocks forever. Don't even think about staying alive until dawn." M, whose eyes were so cold that ice was about to fall off, said in a low voice. After he finished speaking, a muffled voice that sounded like someone was covering their mouth with difficulty followed. "Damn it, M, help me kill that bastard." The V8 was still alive. He drove too fast and made a right turn into the pile of rock. In the end, he was still a step too late. The windshield on the driver's side was shattered by the flying rocks and debris. All kinds of debris smashed toward the left side of his face, and his vision was temporarily affected. Just a second before he lost control of the car, he stepped hard on the brake. The result was, his head knocked against the steering wheel, causing his vision to turn black. His surroundings became very quiet for a while, and in the next moment, it was as if countless bees were buzzing around. He seemed to have heard the shouts of his comrades, but he also seemed to have missed it. His vision was blacked out, and he even had a breath stuck in his chest. For a while, he was unable to speak normally. He didn't answer immediately, which scared his comrades. Now that he had spoken, all the team members heaved a sigh of relief. When the T6 combatant, who had lost half his soul, heard the familiar voice, he heaved a sigh of relief. He did not speak again, and aimed his gun at the enemy who was firing at them. Xia Jinyuan, who had successfully reached the entrance of the mine and was about to rush out, shouted fiercely, "If you're not dead, hurry up and drive the car over." Yes. The V8 driver, who was still alive, released the brake pad on his shoe and stepped on the accelerator. The rumbling sound of the truck's engine was heard again, and this time, it reached the ears of the armed illegal militant who was still crouching on the ground. The moment he heard the sound of the car's motor, the illegal militant's eyes flashed with disbelief and anger. He thought he had killed someone, but in the end, he hadn't. There was nothing more discouraging than this. However, what was even more discouraging was yet to come. M, who had locked onto him, pressed his lips together and raised his rifle. Chapter 43-33. The soldiers of the Snowfield Brigade were skilled at shooting people in the back, but if they were shot in the back, it would be a different story. While the armed men were still trying to figure out how to retrieve the shells, M, who had set up his rifle, opened fire. He wasn't going to play around. Things that needed to be settled in one shot had to be settled in one shot to avoid wasting bullet. Bang, a single bullet was fired. The tip of the bullet turned the raindrops into mist and flew straight for the target's head. The brain was the most important part of the human nervous system. The central nervous system was the most active. If the brain was damaged, it would either cause death or paralysis. The bullet passed through the back of the head and exited between the eyebrows. Red, white, and brain fragments flew out together. Before they reached the ground, they were washed away by the rain into the cracks of the waste rock. The person was still lying on the ground and didn't have the chance to get up. After taking care of the target, M gripped his rifle tightly and quickly retreated from the top of another pile of waste rocks. He had to clear the area now. While retreating, M ran into a Libyan employee who was also holding a gun and was nervously hiding in a corner. M didn't alert him and chose to avoid him. The surviving Libyan employees were now hiding. Even if they had stolen guns, they hid them because they realized that someone was killing those damn people one by one. V8 drove the truck straight and quickly entered the area cleared by the Snowfield Brigade. He was getting closer and closer to the rescued Chinese employees. Xia Jinyuan detonated the detonator and a huge explosion came from the entire mountain range. The mountain collapsed and the ground cracked. The entire mining area shook. Boom, boom, boom. The mine collapsed. Even the entire mountain showed signs of collapsing. The people inside, including the 6 Westerners who were specially sent to check, were all buried in the mountain. This unforeseen event stunned the armed men who were still fighting with their guns. They finally realized that things were worse than they had imagined. When they thought about who else was in the mine, the armed men began their final frenzied attack. Get in the car, get in the car. Hurry, get in the car. Amidst the earth-shattering sounds of gunfire, the water ghosts pulled the 11 Chinese employees into the car one by one. The person in charge whose knee had been blown up was one step ahead of them. At this moment, he was covered with a tarpaulin. The 12 Chinese employees got into the truck, and the 15 water ghosts who were protecting them got into the truck as well. The rescued Chinese employees were all lying on the ground, while the 15 water ghosts, including Captain Li Jinyan, were all kneeling with guns in their hands. They squatted in all 4 directions of the truck, suppressing it with their firepower as they rushed toward the entrance of the mine. All hostages have been successfully rescued. Retreat now. Retreat now. Support us from the front, support us from the front. The password was repeated, and the truck retreated as fast as it could. V8 drove while Li Jinyan, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, was responsible for clearing the debris. The car rushed out of the rain and rushed to the Chinese camp with the 12 Chinese employees who had survived the disaster. The peacekeeping soldiers guarding outside began to move. Now it was their turn to come out and receive the hostages who had all boarded the car. Another round of fierce fighting began. Grenades were used to blow open the metal gate of the mine, and the armed men who tried to resist and stop the retreat were killed one by one. As for the Libyan employees, it was most suitable for the Chinese peacekeeping soldiers to come out and comfort them. In stiff English, he told the surviving Libyan employees to leave this place immediately and not to stay any longer. Amidst the sound of gunfire, the surviving Libyan employees finally rushed out of the blasted door under the cover of the Chinese peacekeepers. At that moment, they knew that they had successfully survived. At the most critical moment, the Chinese peacekeeping soldiers stood up and let them leave alive. Chapter 43-34. Another truck drove out. This time, it was to support the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces who were still fighting in the mine. Retreat, retreat! I'll cover, you guys retreat. Where's the captain? Captain, say something. What do you mean? I'm with Qing Niao. Let's retreat quickly. F***CK, aren't there heavy machine gunners? Why isn't there any movement? F***CK, wait for you to remember? F***CK, where are you? Why don't I see you? The rescue of the hostages was successful, and even the channel became lively. The cooperation of the soldiers of the two special forces could be said to have wiped out a large number of people. Other than the illegal militants who had escaped and hid far away, the rest were all wiped out, leaving no survivors. If they had only relied on the water demons of the storm commandos to sneak into the mine to rescue the hostages, how could they have succeeded so quickly? They did not have enough manpower and weapons, and they might even have to report the number of casualties. When the water demons who had already rushed out of the mine heard the cheerful voices of their brothers, deep smiles appeared on their resolute faces. It was good to leave alive. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade started to get into the vehicles. Yi Qian was the first to jump in, followed by Xia Jinyuan. The truck retreated according to the planned retreat route. Along the way, they picked up their comrades and jumped in one after another. One by one, they retreated safely. The remaining illegal militants didn't dare to exchange fire anymore. They didn't gather together, but scattered to the east and west. Faced with an opponent who had more firepower and strength than them, they didn't dare to show their faces easily. There were about 100 illegal militants who had entered the mine, while the Chinese Special Forces had 31 people. Even if the enemy had twice the number, they were still at a disadvantage. It should be known that the ability of a Special Forces soldier was far superior to that of a normal soldier. In battle, a Special Forces soldier could fight against more than 5 normal soldiers. Therefore, even if the illegal militants had more people, they would lose without a doubt. Of course, there was another important factor. The other party did not expect that the Chinese side would be able to send out peacekeepers to rescue the hostages, and they did not expect that it would be the Chinese Special Forces. They thought that by restraining the 2 Chinese peacekeepers stationed in Jenny City and Cowltown, the Chinese side would not be able to send out any extra troop. They thought so, and so did the Western countries who were cooperating with the illegal militants. The United Nations was still condemning the cruel acts of the illegal militants and trying to make them remember the peacekeeping regulations. The Chinese side had already solved the biggest problem. Just as the illegal militants were still trying to threaten the Chinese side, demanding that the Chinese peacekeeping forces in Libya scram back to China and give them the right to operate the mine and all the equipment, the special forces sent by the Chinese side had already left the mine with the hostages. Not only did they successfully rescue the hostages, but the Chinese peacekeepers also brought back the surviving Libyan employees. Instead of riding in the same car, they left in 2 hidden trucks. When the Libyan employees got on the bus and learned that they would be settled in the camp of the Chinese peacekeeping forces, their eyes were filled with tears and a deep sense of security. The country did not give them a sense of security, but the peacekeepers did. They stayed close to each other without saying a word. They leaned on each other until they were further away from the mining area. Chapter 43-35. The mine had collapsed, burying the people and machines together. In other words, this place would become an abandoned site and would never be reopened. 5 kilometers away from the mine, the Snowfield Brigade and the Storm Commandos switched vehicles. The Snowfield Brigade would protect the rescued Chinese employees, while the Storm Commandos would rest in another vehicle. A total of 4 trucks were driven out. The Snowfield Brigade also split into 2 groups. One group was with the water ghosts, and the other came out to protect the hostages. As for Yi Qian, she was with the Storm Commandos, so she naturally had to return to the team. However, she did not return. She was pulled back by Xia Jinyuan and continued to stay with Xia Jinyuan to protect the Chinese employees. The Chinese employees who got into the car looked back at the mine where they had lived for almost a year. A technician cursed under his breath. He felt helpless, angry, and most of all, sighing. A worker beside him patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't curse. We'll just move to another place. At least we're still alive. As long as we're alive, what's there to be afraid of?" A year of exploration, a year of mining, and it was destroyed overnight. Sigh. The technician scratched his head and wiped the rain off his face. He gritted his teeth and said, "I don't know where those bastards got the news from. It doesn't matter if it's destroyed or not." The technician was responsible for the mechanical technology. He had been following the machinery from the mining to the mining process. He was a witness when the desired resources were extracted. Now that the hard work he had put in had to be destroyed because of the outside world, he was so sad that he secretly cried a few times. He was very scared when he was kidnapped, but he really did not cry. Now he secretly cried until his nose was stuffed. It's okay. Everything will be easy as long as we're here. Let's ask about Ding Gong's injury first. I don't know if his leg can be saved." The technician glanced at the temporary shelter created by the 4 Chinese peacekeeping soldiers who were half squatting and holding onto the waterproof cloth. He stared at it for a while before turning around and whispering, "They should still be working on it. Let's ask them later. I don't know if Ding Gong's leg can be saved." Sigh. The technician sighed. It was not up to them to decide whether the leg could be saved or not. They would have to wait for the military doctor's opinion. "Let's rest for a while. We'll ask the military doctor when he comes out." The Chinese employees who were sitting next to each other heard this and did not speak. They leaned against each other and staggered out of the rainforest in the rain. The rescued Chinese employees did not know that the rescuers were special forces sent by the country. They had always thought that they were peacekeeping soldiers. Even the worker who was treating the wounds at this moment thought the same. In the end, he was hit by a bullet and knelt on the spot. The Chinese staff saw him in so much pain that his facial nerves were twitching, but he did not make a sound. When he asked what kind of ores this mining factory opened, the worker said several types, such as gold, copper, manganese. He even handed over a list of materials that he always carried with him and told the other party that they had just sent out a batch of manganese the day before yesterday. It wasn't much, only about 50 kilograms. Afraid that the other party would not believe him, he even showed them the text message on his phone. Because of Ding Gong's cooperation, the illegal militants who kidnapped them did not give them too much trouble. They asked the other Chinese employees, and since Ding Gong said so, they all went in this direction. In the end, even they themselves believed that they were only mining gold, copper, and manganese. Chapter 43-36. In the end, the ones who didn't make it out alive weren't just normal workers. They were all regular workers in the military chemical factory. Although they weren't soldiers, they had all received formal training. From the moment they were kidnapped, they knew that even if they were going to die, they had to bite their tongues and not say anything. If he really King said it out loud, it wouldn't just be an ordinary infamy. Now, they had saved the people and didn't say anything. As for the mining factory, when the worker took out the list of materials, they had a vague idea of what was going to happen. Thinking about the transfer of machinery, the scope of their idea had expanded. The mining factory was going to be destroyed sooner or later. The worker who had lost a lot of blood was still being treated. The car drove 10 kilometers away from the camp. The Snowfield Brigade's Special Forces soldiers arranged the guards and immediately covered the worker with a waterproof cloth to give him first aid. They were all trained in battlefield first aid. In order not to waste time, they treated the worker's wound quickly and roughly. K7 looked at his comrade who was removing his bandage. Finally, He poked his head out and asked Yi Qian, who was in charge of security, to help. At this moment, Yi Qian became K7's assistant. He cooperated with K7 to treat the worker's gunshot wound. Yi Qian saw the worker's broken knee and looked away. The injury was very serious. The entire kneecap was shattered. The bullet was embedded in the bone between the calf and thigh. K7 couldn't take it out. Although it was unfortunate, Yi Qian felt lucky. It wasn't a bullet from a rifle. It was a bullet from a NATO handgun. K7 couldn't take the bullet out. The environment didn't allow him to do so either. The painkillers worked. When they were cleaning the wound, the worker woke up. He didn't feel much pain. He had fainted after being carried into the car. When he woke up, the first thing he asked in a hoarse voice was if they were all alive. After receiving Yi Jian's nod, he instantly heaved a sigh of relief. His entire body relaxed as he lay down and said, "1 leg in exchange for 11 lives. It was worth it." K7 didn't say that he might have to amputate his leg, but the worker said it himself. Yi Qian pursed his lips and said softly, "It's not at the stage of amputation. Don't think too much." He didn't want to comfort him. "It's okay. As long as he's still alive." The worker in his 40s was very open-minded. He pulled his bleeding lips and smiled. "I've been to 2 war-torn countries. I've seen too many gunshot wounds. The closest I've seen was the first time. When I returned to the unit, I had nightmares for half a month. It's better to be alive." As long as he was still alive, amputation was not an issue. "In my line of work, as long as your brain isn't damaged, everything is negotiable." Even so, Yi Jian could see that Ding Gong's clenched fists were trembling. K7, who had a cold personality, did not know how to say comforting words, but he had already noticed the worker's fear. His brows furrowed slightly, and he seemed to be trying very hard to come up with a few comforting words. In the end, he pursed his lips and only said one sentence. "Many soldiers are not as brave as you." Their jaws almost fell to the ground. It was late at night and the sun wasn't rising from the west. K7, who always worked and didn't talk, knew how to comfort people. Even though they were his comrades, they didn't get a single word of comfort from him. Yi Qian didn't know. He thought that although K7 didn't talk much, he was good at being concise. K7 didn't think he was comforting the injured. He was just telling the truth. Chapter 43-37. Even for soldiers in the combat unit, it was normal that they had never seen a gunshot wound in their 2 to 3 years of service. As for the worker, he had been to 2 war-torn countries and had seen a wound that did not even cover half of his chest. That was the power of a large caliber 12mm bullet. After a long while, he finally managed to squeeze out a few words of comfort. However, this sentence of comfort made the worker's eyes brighten up. Wasn't it true? He was much braver than many soldiers. Yi Qian secretly gave K7 a thumbs up. Not bad, he knew how to comfort people. K7 accepted Yi Qian's praise calmly. He had spent so much effort to say that, and he was praised. Could he say that he was embarrassed? Of course not. There was no blood bag. After stopping the bleeding, stopping the pain, debriding the wound, and disinfecting the wound, Yi Qian bandaged the worker's wound. Once he was done, he half-squatted and lifted the waterproof cloth to make it easier for K7 to treat the wound. His comrades sat down and covered the worker's body from head to toe to prevent the rain from falling on his body. After the worker's wound was treated, the 11 Chinese workers who were waiting saw the military doctor move out. With the technician as the representative, he softly asked K7 if there was a need for amputation. K7 looked at the Chinese worker who was talking to him. He thought for a while and answered simply, "He's fine for now. He's asleep." He did not say anything else. Fine for now? That means he's fine for now. There's no need for amputation. The 11 Chinese workers were laughing and crying at the same time. Just like that, their emotions fluctuated like a flood. They laughed and cried while expressing their gratitude. The technician held K7's hand and cried until K7's back was as stiff as a steel plate. K7's back was as straight as a pencil and did not move at all. This was the first time K7 had encountered something like this. He did not know how to deal with it. He wanted to ask for help, but then he realized the 11 Chinese workers were holding his 11 comrades' hands. They were all crying like children. Perhaps it was because G3 was about to become a father, but he patted the back of a Chinese employee with a benevolent look on his face. Yi Qian almost got a handshake as well, but someone reacted quickly and pulled his comrade X, then pulled Yi Qian back. Caught off guard, X was shaken by the Chinese staff, while Yi Qian was pulled into someone's arms. Yi Qian was caught off guard. Coupled with the shaking of the car, he was suddenly pulled and fell into Xia Jinyuan's arms. The back of his head slammed into Xia Jinyuan's jaw, causing both of them to gasp. His jaw hurt and the back of his head hurt. The good thing was that Yi Qian was now sitting in Xia Jinyuan's arms. His back was firmly leaning against Xia Jinyuan's broad chest, and he was hugged tightly. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows in surprise. His original intention was to pull her away so that she wouldn't be hugged by other men. Who knew that he would end up benefiting himself? Benefits fell from the sky, how could he not cherish them? Humans should cherish their blessings. Therefore, Lieutenant Colonel Xia decided to be a man who cherished his blessings. He held the gun with one hand and wrapped the other around Yi Qian's waist. The only thing that made him a little unhappy was that the tactical vests they were wearing were in the way and did not allow them to be more intimate. "Are you throwing yourself into my arms?" The man who cherished his blessings chuckled and whispered into Yi Qian's ear. "Comfort in battle? Not bad, I like it." After the business was over, Xia Jinyuan decided to relax. How could he be so tense? He would age easily. He should relax when it was time. Chapter 43-38. There wasn't much time to relax. Xia Jinyuan had always been good at using his time, so he wouldn't miss any chance to relax. After 2 consecutive maneuver battles, even an Iron Man like him couldn't take it anymore. He urgently needed to rest and catch his breath. He dared to relax like this, but Yi Qian didn't. She didn't care about the pain at the back of her head and hurriedly said, "Everyone is watching you closely. How dare you touch me? Let go." As she spoke, she tried to pry open the iron arm around her waist with both hands. "No one is watching. Everyone is busy." Xia Jinyuan wouldn't let her. Even with one arm around her waist, he still had enough strength to hold her down and not let her escape from his arms. His voice was a little hoarse from the smoke, but it was soft and seemed to have a thin hook that went straight to Yi Qian's heart. Even though she knew that they might be discovered, she couldn't bear to push him away. Therefore, she didn't use all her strength to pull his arm, making it easier for Lieutenant Colonel Xia to have his way. 2 consecutive maneuver battles. "Baby, let me lean on you. I'm a little tired." Yi Qian. Acting spoiled again. She didn't even know how to act spoiled. The spoiled Yi Qian had no choice but to stop pulling his arm. Even her voice softened. "Does it hurt? I can feel the pain at the back of my head even with the helmet on." Even her helmet was hurting from the impact, not to mention his jaw that had been hit. It hurt a little, but it wasn't a big deal. However, since his girlfriend was so concerned, Lieutenant Colonel Xia nodded solemnly and said with a little grievance, "It hurts. Your chin is bruised." I almost cried. It can't be that serious. Thinking of the pain in the back of her head, even when she was wearing a helmet, Yi Jian felt a little uneasy and raised her hand to touch his shoulder. Just as her fingers touched his jaw, she heard his faint gasp again. "It really hurt, it wasn't fake." "Don't touch it. It still hurts. You hit yourself so hard. It's going to be bruised tomorrow. If you didn't pull me just now, I wouldn't have hit myself so hard." The stubble on his chiseled jaw was a little prickly. Yi Qian's heart ached as he spoke. He didn't dare to use too much force with his fingers and only stroked it very gently. Go back to the barracks and see if there's any ice. Use some ice and see if it can alleviate the bruises. Although she said that, she looked around vigilantly. Fortunately, her comrades in the same car were comforting the 11 Chinese employees in the same car, especially G3. Yi Jian glanced at them a few times and felt strange for no reason. Why did it seem like they were comforting children? She was only distracted by G3, but Xia Jinyuan, who was hugging her from behind, seemed to have seen her directly. He chuckled and explained, G3. Impressive. He went back home on vacation for half a month and used all his strength to torment his wife every night. I didn't expect that he would torment her until she had a baby. Sister-in-law is more than 2 months pregnant. Originally, she wanted to tell us after 3 months, but she was overjoyed when she received the news. She only told us before we left that she was going to be a father soon. She even said it a few times, but she almost couldn't hold it in. Right now, he's looking like a loving father. Just take it that he's becoming a father in advance. Without explaining, Yi Qian only felt that G3's actions were a little strange. After listening to his explanation, she felt very immersed in the role. It was just like what Captain Xia said. G3 was going to be a father. What a joyous occasion. He's also the first father in our team. Now, all the veterans in our team have been unilaterally declared as godfathers by him. I feel very helpless. He's still a child. How did he become a father? He spoke quite seriously at the beginning, but towards the end, Yi Qian couldn't help but pinch his thigh. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was caught off guard, almost cried out in pain. Chapter 43-39. Pinch his thigh. It hurts, it hurts, it hurts. Be gentler, gentler. Yi Qian did not loosen his grip, so Lieutenant Colonel Xia begged for mercy. I won't say it, I won't say it. I'm just explaining it to you. I don't mean anything else. Can you loosen your grip too? Yi Qian, who did not stop, asked him with a smile. Yes, yes, I'll loosen my grip after another minute. Just 1 more minute. Between pain and benefits, Comrade Xia Jinyuan stubbornly chose benefit. Pain was nothing. Soldiers were not afraid of hardship, tiredness, and pain. There was pain every day, but hugging a girlfriend was not every day. Yi Qian was both amused and angry. He was really, the more mature he was, the more thick-skinned he became. In the end, Yi Qian could not bear to see him in pain, so he loosened his grip and said, Stop fooling around. Have a good rest. We still have to make a detour back to Cowltown. We don't know if anything will happen on the way, so take the time to rest and recuperate. The sobbing around them also became much softer. They were all grown men, so they couldn't help but wail for a moment. Now that their tears were flowing, their fear was also released. How could they continue to hold onto the hands of the peacekeepers who had saved them and cry? When they loosened their grip, they kept apologizing and thanking them, leaving the Snowfield Brigade's Special Forces soldiers at a loss for a while. On the surface, they still had to act cool and express that they had done what they were supposed to do. Yi Qian could not help but laugh a few times as he watched. Her comrades were very powerful, but they were also very cute. The Chinese employees, whose bodies and minds were completely relaxed, gradually quieted down. They closed their eyes and fell asleep soundly with the rocking of the vehicle. It was raining, but their drenched clothes did not stop them from falling asleep. With a group of Chinese soldiers who were willing to sacrifice their lives to save them, they could also sleep peacefully. The Special Forces soldiers who had been operating continuously were extremely tired at this time. When all the Chinese employees fell asleep, Yi Qian's cute comrades finally dared to move their long legs and hands that were slightly numb. Standing firm, moving like the wind, sitting like a clock. In front of the people, The image of soldiers could not be destroyed. Now that the people were asleep, they all heaved a sigh of relief. Oh my God, this is even more tiring than running 10 kilometers. The T6 combatant swung his arms and said softly, I don't know how much tears I've shed on this side of my arms. He cried until I was dumbfounded. I didn't expect a man to be so scary when he cried. Wasn't that so? She really cried until they were dumbfounded. They didn't know how to comfort her at all. A young lady throwing herself into their arms, cough, to express that she could still accept it, but a grown man grabbing their hands and crying at the top of his lungs. That scene, they couldn't help but shudder when they recalled it. Understand a little, understand a little. After surviving a disaster, emotions are a little richer. After crying, everything will be fine, G3 said with a smile. His fatherly face made his comrades unable to bear to look at him directly. Xia Jinyuan, who had already let go of Yi Qian and sat upright, waited for his comrades to finish speaking. He then said calmly, The two of you will take turns to be on guard. The rest of you will rest. There are still things to be done after this, so you have to rest well. Yes, they answered in unison. There was no need for Xia Jinyuan to make any arrangement. His comrades arranged their guards and quickly fell asleep with their guns in their arms. They did not arrange for Yi Qian to be on guard. As long as there were enough people, the male soldiers would usually not arrange for Yi Qian to be on guard. As for the female soldiers, they would definitely take care of them when they could. Yi Qian was indeed tired. She did not refuse and prepared to lean against the wet and cold partition of the car to sleep. Comrade Xia Jinyuan patted her on the shoulder and said with a smile, Rest here. Otherwise, I won't have anywhere to lean on. Chapter 43-40. Before Yi Qian could answer, a comrade with sharp ears answered. Captain, I can lend you my shoulder to lean on. Long Eagle said with a chuckle. It couldn't be helped since he had overheard it. You don't want to sleep? Why don't you stay on guard tonight? I'll sleep right away. Sorry to disturb you. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. Long Eagle immediately closed his eyes and fell asleep. G3, T6, and the others lowered their heads and laughed silently. As expected of their captain, he was amazing. The other comrade who did not know what was going on also laughed. It was not a laugh of knowing what was going on, but a laugh of mischief between men. The female soldier, Qing Miao, was the prettiest girl in their team. Q King had already said that he had to coax her first before coaxing her to join the team. She was only a year away from graduating from Qing Miao's military academy, so she just had to hurry up and report to the team when she graduated next year. It was raining. The car drove towards Cowltown in the rainy night. The water ghosts of the storm commandos had already gone to bed early, but Demon King Li Jinyan slept much later than them. He called Xia Jinyuan on the comms many times but did not get a response. After knowing that they had all turned off their comms, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. As for when he would fall asleep, even Li Jinyan did not know. When Yi Qian woke up, the car had already driven out of the rainforest. At this moment, she felt like she had fallen into a furnace. She was clearly drenched in the rain, but she did not feel cold at all. Her hands and feet were still warm. When she moved again, Yi Qian knew why. She had fallen asleep while resting her head on Captain Xia's shoulder, and now her entire body was in his arms. No wonder she slept so soundly. When she opened her eyes and woke up, the sky was already bright. With a slight movement, the man hugging her also woke up. Having just woken up, he always knew who he was hugging. With his eyes half closed, he kissed Yi Qian on the cheek and even said gently, "Good morning." The kiss and the good morning were seamlessly connected. Yi Qian did not even have the chance to react or reject him before he finished kissing her. The sky was already bright, and there were still comrades on alert. With this kiss, Yi Qian looked up at the alert position and saw G3's side profile and T6's sneaky smile. Although G3 was leaning sideways, he was also smiling. Needless to say, both of them had seen it. Fortunately, it wasn't a comrade who didn't know the truth who saw it. It was a comrade who knew about her relationship with Captain Xia. Yi Qian got up from his embrace. She straightened her body slightly before he pulled her back into his embrace. It's still early. Let's sleep a little longer. Since he had just woken up, his husky voice was extremely sexy. Yi Qian blushed and felt her ears go numb, as if she had been electrocuted. At that moment, Yi Qian accepted her fate and let him hug her. Xia Jinyuan had always had a sense of propriety. Even though he was extremely reluctant, he still let go of Yi Qian. If he continued to hug him, all of his comrades, including the Chinese staff, would see them. The sky was already bright. The Special Forces soldiers who had woken up from their dreams were already awake the moment they opened their eyes. A few of the Chinese staff members who had woken up suggested that they wanted to get out of the car to take care of themselves. There were no problems nearby, so all 4 trucks stopped. Those who needed to be on alert stayed on alert, and those who needed to take care of their personal problems did so. After Xia Jinyuan finished taking care of himself, he came out and saw Yi Qian standing alone in the bushes that were half a person's height. She was looking to the east, and no one knew what she was thinking. The rain that had been falling since yesterday evening had stopped at some point. The bright blue sky was as clear as a mirror, and even the air was exceptionally fresh. It was so beautiful that one could stop and linger for a long time. Chapter 43-41. With such a clean sky, it was hard to tell that this land had been destroyed by war. Yi Qian looked at the sky and relaxed his eyebrows slightly, enjoying the hard-won peace in this war. It's a sunny day today. Xia Jinyuan walked over and looked at the sky. Yi Qian heard footsteps and turned around. He smiled at him and said, "Yes, it's a sunny day. The sky is very beautiful. Just looking at it like this makes one's heart feel peaceful." The sky in Libya has always been beautiful, especially on sunny mornings. The sun will be out all day today. You can sit in the car for a day and dry your clothes. It could indeed dry the clothes. Xia Jinyuan didn't say much. It was too common for people to dry clothes, so it wasn't worth mentioning. Seeing that her camouflage uniform was a little messy, he naturally reached out to help Yi Qian tidy it up. The clothes had absorbed a little too much water, so he twisted them while he was at it. He then sighed and said, "Your equipment is so simple that I can't bear to say it. I'll talk to the Devil King later, and ask him to apply to the higher-up." Yi Qian tugged at his tactical vest. It was still a little heavy because of the water, but he couldn't take it off. She looked up slightly at the man who tidied her clothes. Her dark eyes reflected the blue sky like transparent glass, and only Xia Jinyuan's figure could be seen in the rippling water. He lowered his head and she raised her head. Naturally, he could see the subtle changes in her eyes and face. Her sparkling eyes only contained his figure, as if they couldn't contain anything else. Xia Jinyuan, who didn't stop what he was doing, swayed fiercely. His heart felt like it was wrapped in honey. His thin lips curved slightly, and he resisted the urge to kiss her again. He tried very hard to turn his attention away. Now that they've started it, there will be more of this in the future. Your equipment is too simple. Yesterday, the Devil King told me that your equipment was only a Type 95 rifle. At that time, I thought that you all went to the mining area with the determination to die. At the mention of this, Xia Jinyuan's attention was diverted for a second, and his handsome face was already cold. Yi Qian had carried out a few missions overseas before, so compared to this battle with the Storm Commandos, his equipment was indeed much more complete. However, their mission this time was different, and they could only go light. Seeing that his expression was so tense that even his jaw had been bruised by him last night, he explained, The mission we received this time required all of us to go light. We had to leave and turn back at the last minute to rescue the Chinese staff, so our equipment didn't keep up. However, you can talk to my big brother about it. You can't fall behind in terms of equipment. You have to have a complete set. She could also tell that the Storm Commando's equipment was much worse than the Snowfield Brigade's. If Captain Xia said that the Water Ghosts would often go out on missions in the future, then their equipment would have to keep up. Yi Qian saw that his attire was a little messy, and his tactical vest was also crooked. Yi Qian spoke as he helped him tidy up. It was normal for comrades to dress neatly. Even if they were seen by others, they wouldn't think much of it. Yi Qian was very natural and neat, and Xia Jinyuan even tilted his neck slightly to make it easier for her to tidy up. The country's equipment is still a little simple, and everything is still in progress. Let's take it one step at a time. When the day comes that the entire army is equipped with top-notch equipment like the Snowfield Brigade's Special Forces, the country's strength and military strength will increase by many levels. Yi Qian, who was speaking, straightened his collar, adjusted his equipment, and patted his shoulder. Not bad, a very handsome male soldier. It was just that, the bruise on his chin was a little annoying. Last night's collision had indeed hit his chin hard. Chapter 43-42. They didn't continue talking about the equipment. If they did, they would be going off topic. The two of them squeezed out some time to talk alone. These weren't problems that could be solved in a short period of time. It was fine if they didn't talk about it. In the end, Xia Jinyuan patted Yi Qian's head lightly and sighed. Be good. In the future, you should fight with us. I really don't feel at ease letting you stay away from us. Last night, I wished I could just fly over on a plane and greet all the ancestors on my brother-in-law's side. Hearing this, Yi Qian's eyes curved into crescents. Brother-in-law's grandfather. Ahem, Captain Xia was very clear. He was all scolding the Li family. After greeting them, I felt stupid. No matter how shabby the equipment is, we can't not go to the battlefield because of it. When we are needed, we have to be there. Otherwise, who will save them? I still believe in the fighting ability of the Water Ghost. I also believe in the Devil's commanding ability. It's just that I was a little panicked at that time. I was afraid that something might happen. Yi Qian's nose twitched. He lowered his head and stroked the rifle that never left his side. His soft voice and the cool morning breeze drifted over. We didn't think of going to die. Big Brother made a very careful battle plan. Although it was very dangerous, as long as we were careful, we would be able to come back alive. I didn't expect to suddenly receive a notice that you were coming over. They were so happy, but I was the only one who was dumbfounded. For some reason, I felt guilty as if I had been caught doing something bad. As she spoke, she pursed her lips and smiled. Because she was happy, her eyes were bright and beautiful, like dewdrops on leaves. They were so sparkling that it made people feel tender and affectionate. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but laugh. You're right. I'm here to catch you. I just left a few days ago. What about you? You actually came to Libya to carry out a mission. You're even fighting across the military. But those guys in the water were so happy that they kept saying in front of me that you're a member of their team and a member of the Navy. I even wanted to stuff grass into their mouth. You're clearly my people. How did you become a member of their team? She even played a little petty. She didn't say that they were from the team, but she said they were my people. How could Yi Qian not understand? She heard it and felt sweet in her heart. What do you mean by your people and people in the team? I'm still a student in school. Yi Qian, who was feeling very sweet inside, also started to flaunt his eloquence. Even though he was clearly happy, he pretended to be nonchalant. Xia Jinyuan was so amused by her sweet expression that he covered his thin lips with his fist and laughed. Alas, why was his little fox so adorable? His smile was a little too wide, and it affected his chin that had been bruised by Yi Qian's helmet last night. In less than 3 seconds, his handsome face twitched in pain, and he couldn't even smile anymore. Don't laugh, don't laugh. It's all bruised. Yi Qian's heart ached. If it weren't for the fact that it was broad daylight and her comrades weren't far away, she would have tiptoed to blow on him. What's wrong? You want to blow it for me? The injury is too serious. Blowing won't work. You have to kiss it. Once isn't enough. 10 times is the only way for you to recover. She was very familiar with Captain Xia. He always had a bad taste in his mouth. She didn't blow on him, let alone kiss him. She glanced around and saw that the 10-minute break was over. Everyone gathered and got into the car. The Chinese peacekeeping camp in Cowell Town had already been notified, and the Chinese mining companies had also heard the good news. They were all waiting in the camp. Chapter 43-43. When the 4 trucks drove into the camp, cheers and applause rang out. When the peacekeepers carried the injured Chinese leader out of the truck to arrange for surgery, the rest of the Chinese employees had already been hugged tightly in the arms of their compatriots who were waiting for them. Ding Gong needed emergency surgery. He only said, "I'm fine," and was immediately sent away. Whether or not he would be amputated was left to the doctor. The medical equipment in the camp was complete and could complete a large-scale surgery. The 12 Chinese employees all returned to their positions safely. When the news reached the country, everyone who was waiting for the news was finally relieved. Commander Dong of the Navy said to Major General Yang, "When they come back, I'll come to the military to apply for military funding. Our equipment must be properly matched. If they go into battle so lightly, I'll be the first to disagree." As the leader of the Storm Commandos, Demon King Li naturally thought of the problem that Xia Jinyuan had considered. Before the people returned to the country, they had to submit their opinions first. Soldiers had to do things quickly and decisively. How could they drag things out? Commander Dong, who was in the country, ordered his troops to go to the battlefield with light equipment. As he ordered, his heart bled. It was not easy for them to cultivate a naval special operations team. Every water demon was the hope of expanding the naval special operations team in the future. Sacrificing any one of them would be a huge loss. But what could they do? They were needed at that time, and only they, who were preparing to return to the country, could rescue the 12 hostages. Soldiers were trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. When they were needed to go to the battlefield to kill the enemy, they had to go even if they were barehanded. There was no way out. They went up, and now 1 or 2 of them returned safely. After the Navy commander finished speaking, he silently wiped the corners of his eyes with his hand. "They're all alive. They're all alive. Very good, really very good." Major General Yang could understand the Navy commander's feelings at this moment. Back then, when Xia Jinyuan took a few soldiers who had never been to the battlefield, as their immediate superior, he did not sleep. He stayed in the office and did not go anywhere, waiting for them to call back. When everyone returned safely, all his energy was instantly drained, and he secretly wiped the corners of his eyes. "Old Dong, don't wipe your eyes. They're safe now. The camp in Yeni City is not very safe. We have to let them go again." "Let them go again? No way. I don't agree. You guys think of a way yourselves. Don't even think about sending my soldiers over." The Navy commander, who had just finished wiping the corners of his eyes, exploded. "What a joke!" The moment they stepped foot into the camp, they didn't even give them a chance to catch their breath and have a good rest, and now they're asking them to go out? He firmly disagreed. What's the point of not agreeing? It was useless. Commander Dong almost broke the phone when he hung up. What's the point of that? Carry it out. This time, they were going to provide support and not fight. The risk factor was much lower than the previous 2 missions. The Chinese peacekeeping camp was targeted by the illegal armed forces. If the illegal armed forces really took over the camp, they would lose a lot of face. The city's government forces could not hold on for much longer. The peacekeeping forces of several countries stationed in the city were retreating, and the Chinese peacekeeping camp was no exception. When the news of Khlo Khesardin's assassination reached his brother's ears, the leader of the illegal Libyan militants was completely enraged. He gathered his forces to attack the capital of Libya and massacred the government forces in Yeni. Yeni city was about to fall, and the defeated government army could only abandon the city and leave. Chapter 43-44. The situation in Libya was getting more and more chaotic. Illegal militants attacked the capital of Libya, and NRPL militants also attacked the government forces. The Libyan government, which was under attack from both sides, turned to the United Nations for help. The weapons provided by a Western country to the illegal militants arrived at the port ahead of time, but they found that there was no way to contact the mine that was controlled yesterday. They even lost contact with the 6 experts and 4 mercenaries they sent out. The Western country's vice-ministerial leader in charge of this matter realized that there was a problem, but they had no way of knowing what the problem was. In order to prevent the surviving illegal militants from leaking the news, the Snowfield Brigade's special forces destroyed the communication and blew up the vehicles when they retreated. Even if the surviving guys wanted to leak the news, they had to walk out first. It took a long time to walk. How long would it take to walk more than 100 kilometers? By the time they walked out, everything was too late. Realizing that something was wrong, a Western country asked the illegal militants who cooperated with them to go and inquire about the situation. At the same time, 2 special forces of the Chinese Special Forces were ordered to go and meet the Chinese peacekeepers who retreated from the city of Yeni. With the help of the Russian side, the Chinese peacekeepers in Yeni once again repelled the siege of the illegal militants. The British and Russian peacekeepers withdrew, and the Chinese side immediately began to retreat after the fighting ended. The Russian peacekeepers sent over did not leave. They also needed to withdraw to the town of Cowell, so naturally, they would follow the Chinese side. Lieutenant Colonel Zhu first arranged for the wounded to get on the vehicles, and then arranged for the transportation of supplies. The soldiers in front opened the way, the middle was for cover, and the rear was for retreat. They completed the retreat as quickly as possible. A total of 31 special forces from the Snowfield Brigade and the Storm Commandos, including the 2 captains, entered the camp. They only had time to change into camouflage uniforms and grab a few buns in their hand. They did not even have half an hour to rest before jumping on the vehicles to carry out the mission. This time, they all went to meet them as peacekeepers. After getting on the vehicles, they arranged for their guards and seized the time to rest. Yi Qian could not be in the same vehicle as Xia Jinyuan on this trip. She was currently fighting with the water ghosts of the Storm Commandos and could not leave the team at will. Even though Xia Jinyuan wanted to be in the same vehicle, he had no choice. Right now, he was not the captain of the Qing dynasty. His brother-in-law, Demon King Li, was the captain of the Qing dynasty. After personally sending Yi Qian to the truck, he was afraid that Yi Qian would not be able to get on the truck alone, so he decided to jump in first. Then, he reached out to pull Yi Qian up. After pulling him down, he was not in a hurry to let go. He said to the water ghosts sitting in the truck, "Brothers, please take care of my team's Qing Niao." What should he do? He really wanted to kick this guy who had a fake smile and was obviously up to no good out of the car. They then looked at the Demon King who had yet to board the car and was standing below. Seeing that his face was as cold as ice, even his eyes seemed to be frozen, the water ghosts pointed outside the car, indicating for this thick-skinned brother who had climbed up to communicate with their captain and not to stand here and be an eyesore. Li Jinyan, who had yet to board the truck, looked coldly at the arrogant guy who had climbed up to their truck like a host. He cleared his throat and said calmly, "You're trying to stall for time, right? His brother-in-law's voice came from behind. Xia Jinyuan smiled and turned his head to take a look. Then, he said to Yi Qian, who could not do anything to him, "You're a soldier I've trained. Once you're in the brothers' company, don't embarrass me as the captain, understand?" "Understood." Yi Qian was very cooperative and nodded solemnly. Chapter 43-45. How could she not cooperate? Based on her understanding of him, if she didn't cooperate now, she would be the one having a headache. To avoid trouble, she might as well cooperate with him. Moreover, he had indeed brought her up single-handedly. With Yi Qian's cooperation, Xia Jinyuan felt comfortable all over as he jumped out of the car. His movements were clean and swift, and he looked so handsome that Yi Qian's eyes were filled with smiles. Seeing this, Li Jinyan didn't want to say anything more. He glanced at the guys who were still standing there and jumped into the car. He pulled up the tailgate and pulled Yi Qian to his side at the same time. Xia Jinyuan waved his hand and left in satisfaction. "You want to steal Qing Niao? You're thinking too much." When Z7 saw him walking over, he immediately retracted half of his body and sat up straight. He waited for his captain, who looked like a peacock spreading its tail, to come over as soon as he arrived in front of Qing Niao. When they got into the car, Z7's voice was just loud enough for his comrades to hear. "Brothers, we have to be careful. The brother next door is really thinking about our team's Qing Niao. Don't provoke Qing Niao. If she really goes to the storm team in a fit of anger, then we won't even have a place to cry." Qing Niao was still a military academy student. Even if she was in the army, it wasn't impossible for her to cross the military. Especially an outstanding female soldier like her. Who wouldn't want her? "I'm not trying to scare you. Brothers, we have to be 120% vigilant." Z7 secretly glanced at Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who was sitting in the middle, and said this. When he glanced over, Xia Jinyuan knew that he was making fun of him. He glanced at Z7 coldly and a faint smile appeared on his face. Z7 instantly panicked. His strong desire to live made him speak up immediately. In front of all his comrades, he made a big turn. "But don't worry too much. We still have our captain. With our captain, Qing Niao can't run anywhere. Don't you guys agree?" He then turned to Xia Jinyuan and said, "Q King, I was right, wasn't I? With you around, Qing Niao is a member of our team." Raising his hand, Xia Jinyuan patted Z7's dog head and said with a smile, "You're so sensible. Next time, don't say such things that shake the morale of our troops. Since it's your first offense, you'll have to run 20 kilometers with weights when you get back. Let's put it on the tab first and return it when we return home." Z7 was speechless. She had wanted to see him make a fool of himself, but in the end, before he even returned to the country, he was already holding a grudge. The comrades who always liked to watch a good show criticized the captain's punishment for being unfair. It had shaken the morale of the troops. How could 20 kilometers be enough? It should be at least 30 kilometers. Xia Jinyuan, who had always been democratic, sincerely accepted the criticism from his comrades in order to prove that he was a fair and impartial captain. With a wave of his hand, he changed the load from 20 kilometers to 30 kilometers. Z7 angrily protested. What kind of comrades were they? He wanted to change teams. His protest was invalid, but 30 kilometers with weights was valid. With Z7's help, the atmosphere in the car was very relaxed. The water ghosts were also very relaxed. They praised their own team like flowers and even praised their benefits to a higher level so that Yi Qian would be tempted to join their team. Li Jinyan just watched without saying anything and let the water ghosts persuade him. It was not bad to join their team. In the future, he could take care of his sister more. When the water ghosts saw that their captain was letting them persuade him, it was obvious that he also wanted Qing Niao to stay. Hence, they persuaded him even more happily. Yi Qian did not move. He smiled and listened quietly. Occasionally, he would nod to show that he was listening. After 20 minutes, the thirsty water ghosts stopped talking. Yi Qian continued to smile. After a round of persuasion, Yi Qian was still very calm and unmoved. Hence, from then on, the water ghosts of the Storm Commandos did not mention this matter again. This was because they all knew that it was absolutely impossible for Qing Niao to join their team. Chapter 43-46. The evacuation of the Chinese peacekeeping camp in Jenny went smoothly. The illegal militants gathered all their forces to fight with the government forces, vowing to take down Jenny. They also posted a video online, saying that they would rule the land and expel all those who opposed them and defied them from Libya. Finally, they recorded a video of the illegal militants brutally killing the government forces. The bloody scene immediately drew strong condemnation from various countries. Soon, the Libyan president also recorded a video, responding to the illegal militants with an extremely strong and resolute attitude. He also told the various countries that the government forces had killed the leader of the illegal militants, Kukulu Caesardin, and released a set of photos. The photos were provided by the Chinese Snowfield Brigade. Kukulu Caesardin was one of the leaders of the illegal militant. His death instantly caused a huge uproar, encouraging the Libyan government forces. Their morale was greatly boosted, and the Libyans saw new hope. When the video released by the president was released, a certain Western country that had been providing weapons to the illegal militants held a secret meeting. The details of the meeting were unknown, but the weapons that were supposed to be provided a week later were quietly withdrawn from the port. Clearly, the country had the intention to end the cooperation. Kukulu Caesardin was killed by the Libyan government forces? How was that possible? Kukulu Caesardin wasn't killed by the Libyan government forces. Instead, a country secretly sent troops to solve a problem for the Libyan government. Which country was it? News came from the port of SAS that none of their probes had found out who had sneaked into the bilge and killed their great leader. There was not a single clue left at the scene that could be found. Even the bullets were made by NATO, so there was no way to investigate. They avoided the probes, the hidden sentries, and successfully opened the 4 password-locked heavy doors that led to the bottom of the ship. They also successfully avoided another set of probes that were installed in the dark. Even the alarm system did not work at all. No one knew when they had snuck into Port SAS, and no one discovered how they had snuck into the abandoned ship. No one knew how they had cracked the passcode and successfully assassinated so many guards. It had become an undecipherable mystery. Because of this, the Western country immediately realized that something was wrong. They stopped the arms supply and quickly erased the transaction record. When they learned that Kukulu Caesardin had been assassinated, they only temporarily stopped the arms supply. When they learned that the situation in the mining area wasn't good and that they had completely lost contact, they immediately cut off all contact with the illegal militants, wiping out all dealings with them without leaving any trace. At the same time, another secret meeting was held to try and find out which country had helped Libya. The Chinese side was undoubtedly the biggest suspect, and there was a heated discussion about whether the Chinese side had the strength or not. In a meeting room in a heavily guarded building, there were about 10 people sitting in metal leather chairs with solemn expressions. They had already quarreled with each other, and their expressions were solemn, making the atmosphere of the meeting extremely depressing. Someone pointed out that it was impossible because it was impossible for the Chinese side to send peacekeepers to assassinate Kelo Caesar. There were also people who suspected that the Chinese side had secretly sent reinforcement. They were also rebutted. The reason for the rebuttal was very simple. So far, they had not found a force strong enough to complete an assassination without leaving any traces. Chapter 43-47. The heated discussion was fruitless until the Chinese peacekeepers successfully rescued the mine workers who had been held hostage by the illegal militants. The argument finally came to a conclusion. The Chinese didn't participate in the assassination of Klo Caesardin. Their focus was on rescuing the 12 Chinese workers who had been held hostage. The topic of "Does the Chinese have the strength?" came to an end. Of course, they didn't have the strength. How could they save the Chinese workers and assassinate Klo Caesardin? So which country was it? Russia became the biggest suspect, and Russia had enough strength to do it. As for whether Russia had found out which country was supplying weapons to the illegal militants in Libya, so what if they found out? Where was the evidence? There was no evidence. Even if they found out, it was just a discovery. The illegal militants who were fighting with the Libyan government forces didn't know that their arms supply had been cut off. The first leader once again said that he would drive the president out of Libya within a month. He also said to Russia that they would make Russia pay a heavy price. There were not many countries that believed this. Provoking the fighting nation and making the fighting nation pay a painful price. He really didn't know where he got his confidence from. One moment, he declared war on this country, and the next moment, he declared war on another country. The special forces who hadn't received the Chinese peacekeepers in Unyielding didn't know what was happening internationally. Yi Qian, who was resting with her eyes closed, stretched her sore legs. As the car swayed, she couldn't help but yawn a few times. Yi Qian gave up resisting and let herself have a good sleep. She closed her eyes and turned off the headset. It would be embarrassing if all her comrades heard her talking in her sleep. She only turned off the call and didn't cut off the entire communication channel. She could still hear what was said on the channel. Li Jinyan, who also had his eyes closed, felt a weight on his shoulder. He turned his head and saw that his sister had already closed her eyes and fallen asleep. A smile flashed across his eyes as he adjusted his sitting position slightly so that Yi Qian could rest more comfortably on him. The two sides kept in contact and finally met after more than an hour of driving. As soon as the car stopped, Yi Qian, who had fallen asleep, opened her eyes. A familiar voice came through the headset, telling everyone to get out of the car and gather. Xia Jinyuan said as he jumped out of the front passenger seat. They would wait here for the peacekeeping vehicles to arrive. The comrades in the car got off one by one and lined up neatly to wait for the peacekeeping camp vehicles to arrive. About 4 minutes later, they heard the rumbling sound of vehicles coming from the front. Then, the first jeep came out first, followed by the second truck. There were a total of 16 vehicles in the peacekeeping camp. There were 4 jeeps, 3 transport vehicles, 2 ambulances, and the rest were trucks. As they drove over, the special forces who had been in formation for 4 minutes immediately jumped back into the vehicles. The first vehicle became the vehicle of the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces. They led the way to the camp, while the Storm Commandos vehicle was the last vehicle. They were responsible for all the security at the rear. The meeting did not take a minute, and they returned to Cowell Town as quickly as possible. When Commander Dong learned that the meeting went smoothly and there were no twists and turns along the way, he finally felt relieved. He said to Major General Yang, "I can eat one more bowl for dinner tonight." Major General Yang couldn't stop laughing and said, "Be careful, don't blow your stomach." Commander Dong replied, "I'm willing to blow my stomach, as long as my soldiers can return safely." Chapter 43-48. It was noon when they arrived at Corval Town. The 2 teams of special forces who had completed their mission could finally have a good rest. Xia Jinyuan got out of the car and looked around. He then looked back at the convoy that was still slowly driving into the camp. His cold black eyes narrowed slightly as he said to V8, "I'm going to take a nap in front. If it's a small matter, look for G3. If it's a big matter, look for the Devil King. If it's an emergency, look for me on the channel. Remember, don't come looking for me. I'm very tired now. I need a good sleep." For the sake of proof, he was really tired and yawned several times in just one sentence. The T6 combatant nodded in a daze and answered, yes. When he came back to his senses, his team had already strode toward the few large trees in front that were most suitable for cooling off. Are you really that tired? In the past, I could still jump around after fighting for 3 days and 3 nights without sleeping. Why are you so tired today? Could it be that you're old and don't have enough energy? The T6 combatant muttered softly as he stared at the departing figures. Lieutenant Colonel Xia, who had walked far away, did not hear him. He was contacting Yi Qian alone. He did not look tired at all and was full of energy. We have 8 hours to rest. You must be tired. I found a good place. After you get out of the car, get rid of Big Brother and come straight to me. Yi Qian, who was sitting in the last truck, suddenly heard a man's gentle voice in her earpiece. She secretly glanced at her big brother sitting next to her but did not dare to say anything. She only lowered her voice and grunted a few times to show that she already knew and that it was not convenient for her to speak at the moment. Xia Jinyuan was amused when he heard that and did not dare to say anything. It seemed like he was sitting with his brother-in-law. Get rid of Big Brother. Don't let him know. Get out of the car and come over. He suppressed his laughter and continued, let Big Brother know that he's going to do something ruthless like breaking up an affectionate couple again. When I see Big Brother, I'm even more afraid than when I see my father-in-law. It's settled then. After you come in, you'll see 3 large trees lined up side by side behind the tent. I'll take that place first, so it's easy to find. If you really can't find me, I'll come and pick you up. What could Yi Qian say? She couldn't say anything. She couldn't even say a word or two. She was afraid that her big brother would sense it. Li Jinyan really did not expect Xia Jinyuan to play tricks under his nose again. He remembered that there were still 8 hours of rest after entering the barracks, so he had to arrange for his sister to find a bed in the infirmary to rest for a while. He then said, wait for me when you get out of the car. I'll take you to the medics to rest. Don't squeeze with us. Yi Qian, who knew that something would happen later, was so guilty that she almost choked on her own saliva. She almost thought that her brother had really heard her. Yi Qian cleared his throat. He was really not suited to do bad things. He smiled and said, there's no need to go through so much trouble. I'm covered in dust. I don't want to dirty their beds. I'll find a place to rest. You don't have to make any special arrangements. After saying that in one breath, he took a deep breath and tried his best to make himself look calm. She didn't know that Li Jinyan's brows were slightly furrowed. In the end, he didn't say anything and nodded slightly. That's fine too. Don't turn off the communicator. I need to make sure that I can find you at any time. Okay, I understand. Yi Qian smiled and nodded. That was close. They finally got through this. Xia Jinyuan had already walked under the shade of the tree. Yi Qian's truck had just driven into the barrack. Fang Zhongxiang, who was stationed in the barracks in Cowell Town, was talking to Lieutenant Colonel Zhu. They had agreed to meet Captain Li later. As for Xia Jinyuan, they didn't know about his existence. They also didn't know that there were actually 2 special forces teams in the team. The 2 people in charge of the barracks both thought that there was only one special forces team. Chapter 43-49. It was precisely because Lieutenant Colonel Zhu and Lieutenant Colonel Fang did not know of the existence of another special force that Xia Jinyuan said to look for Li Jinyan and not to disturb him. The special forces of the Snowfield Brigade were now a shadow that no one knew about. Li Jinyan got out of the car and met with the lieutenant colonels of the 2 camps. After a few words, they went back to work. Lieutenant Colonel Zhu waited until Li Jinyan came out of the tent before he said to Lieutenant Colonel Fang, who was stationed in the Cowell camp, with lingering fear, fortunately, we met them. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for our 2 camps to rescue the 12 employees in time. When I learned that the 12 Chinese employees had fallen into the hands of the illegal militants, I was thinking about where to send people to rescue them. Speaking of the kidnapping of the Chinese employees, Lieutenant Colonel Zhu's heart was still beating fast. I was really worried at the time. Fortunately, they came to solve the problem and rescued everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Fong nodded. Indeed, the situation in Libya is too chaotic now. We can't let anything happen here. Lieutenant Colonel Nikita from Russia called. Next, both camps will be on guard together until the illegal militants retreat. What are you going to do with those Russian peacekeepers? Drive them back to the Russian camp or continue to stay here? Take a short rest and return to the Russian camp. No need to send a separate car, they have their own. By the way, are there any ready-made steamed buns in the cafeteria? Bring 50 of them back. Lieutenant Colonel Fong laughed. 2 bags of steamed buns as a thank you gift? A specified thank you gift. I like steamed buns. Lieutenant Colonel Zhu also laughed. As all the problems were solved, the smile on his face increased a lot. Each person can eat 3 steamed buns in one sitting. 50 steamed buns are enough for them to eat 2 meals. This thank you gift is quite unique. We don't have any ready-made ones. Let the cookhouse take care of it. Okay, I'll go see the wounded first. Lieutenant Colonel Fong also got up. Let's go and see. The supplies will be arranged by your side. Your soldiers also need to be on guard. After resting and reorganizing, we'll have a big assembly. Everything that needs to be arranged must be arranged. The situation is still uncertain. Cowell Town hasn't been affected by the war yet, but it's hard to say what will happen next. Lieutenant Colonel Fong said as he walked out of the tent with Lieutenant Colonel Zhu. As the people in charge of the camp, they didn't have much time to rest. Everything had to be arranged properly. They did not care about the Special Forces soldiers who had entered the barracks to rest. The military called and told them that all matters of the Special Forces would be handled by their respective team leaders. They would leave the barracks in 8 hours and return home. The Special Forces soldiers who had been fighting continuously got out of the car and didn't even have lunch. One by one, they crawled into their tents and found a random spot to lie down on the ground with their guns. In less than 3 minutes, all of them were sleeping soundly. Yi Qian did not enter the tent to sleep. Instead, he walked around the tent and headed towards the 3 trees that Xia Jinyuan had pointed out. Before she got close, she saw Xia Jinyuan talking to a tall and bulky man from afar. Judging from his attire, she could tell that he was a foreign soldier. The foreign soldier was none other than Luke, who had been with Xia Jinyuan for a year and a half. Luke, who had come from the signal flag to help the Chinese peacekeepers defeat the illegal militants in the barracks this morning, looked as if he had seen a ghost. His light brown eyes were so wide that they were about to fall out of their socket. Xia, he wasn't mistaken. The Chinese peacekeeper in front of him was Xia. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.